The limping nurse was shoved aside like garbage, right as the first armored convoy screamed into the emergency bay. Dr. Marcus Brennan didn't even glance back as he barked orders, calling her washed-up deadweight loud enough for the entire trauma floor to hear. Evelyn Kane said nothing. She just stepped into the shadows, her cane clicking against blood-stained linoleum while chaos erupted around classified injuries and whispered government codes. But when 4 Marine helicopters descended an hour later, rotors shaking the building's foundations, and armed soldiers stormed through demanding Angel 6, everyone froze. Because the woman they'd just humiliated wasn't who they thought she was. If you want to see how a forgotten hero destroys arrogance with one phone call, stay until the end. Like this video, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The rain hit Seattle's Cascade Medical Center like bullets against glass, each drop exploding into fractured light under the emergency room's harsh fluorescent glow. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that refused to end quietly, and the trauma bay was already drowning in the usual urban carnage. 2 stabbings, a pedestrian versus SUV, and a kitchen fire victim whose screams could be heard 3 floors up. Evelyn Kane moved through it all with the kind of efficiency that didn't demand attention. Mid-50s, silver hair pulled into a tight bun, face lined with the particular exhaustion that comes from decades of night shifts. Her left leg dragged slightly with each step, the result of an injury she never discussed, and her cane, smooth wood worn to a shine, clicked a steady rhythm against the floor. She'd worked at Cascade for 8 months now, always taking the shifts nobody wanted, always staying late, always competent in a way that made her nearly invisible. The nursing staff knew her as quiet, skilled, and oddly overqualified for basic floor work. The younger nurses whispered sometimes about why someone with her resume was working nights in a mid-tier trauma center, but Evelyn never explained herself. She simply showed up, did the work, and disappeared before anyone could get too curious. Tonight, she was restocking Trauma Bay 3 when the doors burst open and Dr. Marcus Brennan strode in like he owned the molecular structure of the air itself. 38 years old, Harvard-trained and freshly appointed as chief of trauma surgery after a high-profile stint at Johns Hopkins. He'd arrived at Cascade 6 weeks ago with a reputation for brilliance and an ego that preceded him like a weather system. "Why is she still on the floor?" Brennan's voice cut through the noise, sharp enough to draw every head in the bay. He was pointing directly at Evelyn, his surgical mask hanging loose around his neck, his expression twisted with the kind of disgust usually reserved for septic wounds. Charge nurse Patricia Odom looked up from her station, confused. "Evelyn? She's assigned to—" "I don't care what she's assigned to." Brennan crossed the distance in 4 long strides, his shoes leaving wet prints on the recently mopped floor. "I've been watching her hobble around here for weeks. She's a liability. A lawsuit waiting to happen. If she can't keep up, she doesn't belong in my trauma unit." The room went silent except for the persistent beep of monitors and the rain hammering the windows. Evelyn straightened slowly from the supply cart, her hands still gloved, her expression carefully neutral. She'd heard worse. She'd survived worse. Words were just noise. "Doctor Brennan, Nurse Kane has exemplary performance reviews," Patricia said carefully, her voice carrying the diplomatic tone of someone trying to prevent a scene. "She's never missed a shift, never made a critical error, and her patient outcomes are, I don't give a damn about paperwork." Brennan stepped closer to Evelyn, close enough that she could smell the expensive coffee on his breath. "What I care about is operational efficiency. What I care about is not having dead weight slowing down my team when seconds matter. Look at her. She can barely walk." Evelyn met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to let him know she wasn't intimidated, short enough to avoid escalation. "I can do my job, doctor." "Your job?" Brennan's laugh was acid. "Your job is to not be an obstacle when real medical professionals are trying to save lives. How fast can you run when a code gets called? How quickly can you respond when we need equipment?" He turned to address the room, his voice rising. "Anyone here want to bet their career on her reaction time?" Nobody answered. The other nurses looked away, some embarrassed, others relieved. It wasn't them under his microscope. It was the coward's calculation that Evelyn had seen 1,000 times before in 1,000 different circumstances. Better her than me. Effective immediately, "You're reassigned to clerical duties," Brennan announced, turning back to Evelyn. "File work, supply inventory, anything that keeps you away from critical patient care. And if I see you anywhere near this trauma bay during an emergency, I'll have your employment terminated. Are we clear?" Evelyn removed her gloves with deliberate slowness, dropping them in the biohazard bin. Her cane was propped against the supply cart, and she retrieved it with the practiced motion of someone who'd learned to make weakness look like choice. "Perfectly clear." "Good. Now get out of my sight." She turned without another word, her cane marking time against the linoleum as she walked toward the staff corridor. Behind her, she could hear Brennan already barking new orders, his voice flush with the satisfaction of someone who'd just eliminated a problem. The other nurses returned to their work, the moment already fading into the background noise of hospital routine. But Evelyn's mind was elsewhere. As she walked, she pulled out her phone, not the standard iPhone most people carried, but an older model, unmarked, with a screen that showed only a single encrypted app. She typed quickly, "Situation developing. May need extraction protocol if complications arise." The response came in seconds. "Standing by. Your call. Angel 6. She deleted both messages and pocketed the phone just as the hospital's PA system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel, mass casualty alert, multiple incoming trauma patients, ETA 4 minutes, all available staff to emergency receiving. This is not a drill." The hallway erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses sprinted past Evelyn, doctors emerged from break rooms. Orderlies started clearing corridors. She pressed herself against the wall to let them pass. Just another injured nurse staying out of the way, exactly as she'd been ordered. Through the windows, she could see the first ambulance screaming into the bay, followed immediately by 2 more. But what caught her attention was the 4th vehicle, a black SUV with government plates and the kind of reinforced construction that wasn't meant for civilian use. Then a 5th vehicle, a 6th. This wasn't a normal mass casualty event. Evelyn changed direction, heading not toward the exit, but toward the observation corridor that overlooked the trauma bay. She'd learned long ago that being dismissed often meant being forgotten, and forgotten meant invisible, and invisible meant she could see things others missed. The first stretcher came through at full sprint, paramedics shouting vitals, blood already soaking through field dressings. Behind it, 3 more patients, all male, all with injuries that looked wrong for a typical urban accident. Too precise, too tactical. Gunshot wound to the chest through and through, massive hemorrhaging, shrapnel injuries, multiple penetrating wounds, possible internal bleeding. Head trauma, responsive but disoriented, possible concussion protocol. Brennan was in his element now, directing traffic like a conductor, his earlier cruelty replaced by sharp clinical focus. Whatever else he was, the man knew trauma. He assigned teams with brutal efficiency, prioritizing the salvageable, triaging the hopeless. But the 7th stretcher was different. It came in surrounded by men in dark suits, not paramedics. Federal agents by the way they moved, hands never far from concealed weapons, eyes constantly scanning. The patient was older, 60-something, unconscious, with injuries that made even the veteran nurses step back. "What the hell happened?" Brennan demanded, already assessing the damage. The lead agent's voice was flat, professional. "That's classified. Your job is to keep him alive. I need to know what caused these injuries to treat them properly." "You'll treat them blind, doctor. And nobody discusses this patient, his identity, or his condition with anyone. Federal security protocols are in effect as of now." Brennan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Trauma Bay 1. Let's move." From her observation point, Evelyn watched them transfer the patient. She couldn't see his face from this angle, but she could see the wound pattern, could see the way his vitals were fluctuating on the portable monitor, could see something that made her breath catch. She recognized the injury signature. Her hand went to her phone again, fingers hesitating over the emergency contact. Not yet. She needed to be sure. Below, Brennan was scrubbing in, barking orders for surgical prep. The agents had taken positions outside the trauma bay, creating a perimeter that blocked casual observation. Standard protective detail procedure. But one of the nurses, a younger woman named Sarah Chen, had noticed something. She leaned in close to Brennan as he was gloving up, her voice urgent but too quiet for Evelyn to hear from the observation deck. Evelyn moved quickly, ignoring the protest from her bad leg, using the back stairs that led down to the trauma level. She needed to get closer. Whatever Sarah had seen, it was important. By the time she reached the lower level, she could hear raised voices from Trauma Bay 1. "Not possible," Brennan was saying. "That's just debris from the initial impact." "I'm telling you, doctor, that material is embedded in a pattern," Sarah's voice was insistent. "If you cauterize without removal, you'll what? You've been a nurse for 3 years. I've been doing this for 15. I know debris when I see it." Evelyn appeared in the doorway of the trauma bay, her presence so sudden that one of the agents actually reached for his weapon before recognizing her as hospital staff. "He's right," Evelyn said quietly. "It's just debris." Everyone turned to stare at her. Brennan's face went from surprise to fury in half a second. "What the hell are you doing here? I specifically ordered you to—" "I know what you ordered." Evelyn's eyes weren't on Brennan. They were fixed on the patient's wound, on the metallic fragments that caught the surgical lights in a way that normal shrapnel wouldn't. "And Nurse Chen is wrong. You should proceed with standard cauterization." Sarah looked confused. "But I thought—" "The nurse is right," Evelyn interrupted, her voice carrying a strange emphasis on the word nurse. "This is a straightforward trauma case. No complications. The doctor should definitely use high-heat cauterization on those fragments." Brennan studied her face, suspicion replacing anger. "Since when do you undermine other staff?" "Since I was told to stay away from critical care." Evelyn's expression was perfectly neutral. "I'm just agreeing with your clinical judgment, doctor. Those fragments are clearly inert. Standard procedure applies." But her eyes told a different story. Her eyes were locked on the senior federal agent, and there was something in her posture, military straight despite the cane, that made the man tilt his head slightly. "Everyone out," the agent said suddenly. "Medical personnel only. That includes you." He pointed at Evelyn. "Of course." Evelyn turned to leave, but as she passed the agent, she spoke barely above a whisper. "Tell command that Angel 6 is on site and the package is contaminated." "If he cauterizes, your principal dies in approximately 90 seconds from binary compound activation." The agent's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "Say that again." "You heard me." Evelyn's voice was still quiet, but there was steel in it now. "That's not shrapnel. It's a delivery system. 2-stage toxin, heat activated. Someone tried to guarantee your principal wouldn't survive surgery, and your doctor is about to give them exactly what they want." "Who the hell are you?" "Make the call. Now." Behind them, Brennan had already picked up the cauterizing tool, the tip glowing orange. "Let's get this cleaned up. Suction ready?" The agent's face had gone white. He released Evelyn's arm and fumbled for his phone, stepping into the hallway. Evelyn could hear him speaking rapidly, codes and clearances tumbling out. "Security, remove this woman from the premises," Brennan ordered, gesturing to Evelyn. "She's interfering with patient care." 2 hospital security guards approached, hands extended to escort her out. Evelyn didn't resist. She'd said what needed to be said. The rest was up to the chain of command. As the guards walked her toward the exit, she heard the agent return to the trauma bay, his voice sharp. "Stop! Stop everything! Nobody touches that patient until—" "This is my operating room," Brennan snapped. "You don't give orders here." "Doctor, I'm telling you to step away from—" "And I'm telling you that I don't take medical direction from federal babysitters. This man is dying. Every second we waste increases his mortality risk. Now either get out or shut up." Evelyn heard the cauterizer activate, heard the sizzle of burning flesh, heard Brennan's satisfied grunt as he began working on the wound. She closed her eyes. 60 seconds, she said to no one in particular. The security guards looked at her like she was crazy. "Ma'am, please come with us." 45 seconds. "Ma'am, you might want to step back from the trauma bay." 30 seconds. The senior agent appeared in the hallway, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression that of a man who'd just received very bad news. He looked at Evelyn, then at the guards holding her arms. "Let her go," he said. "Sir, we were ordered to—" "I said let her go, now." The guards released her immediately. The agent approached, his voice low and urgent. "Command confirms you're Angel 6, medical officer, classified operations presumed inactive. Presumed is the key word. They want to know if the package can be saved. If someone stops your doctor in the next 15 seconds, yes. If not, you're going to need a body bag and a very quiet funeral. The agent ran back into the trauma bay. Evelyn could hear shouting, the sound of instruments clattering to the floor, Brennan's outraged protests. Then the screaming started. Not from Brennan, from the patient. Evelyn limped quickly back to the trauma bay entrance, her cane tapping urgency. Through the doorway, she could see the patient convulsing, his body arching off the table, monitors shrieking alarms. The cauterized wound had turned black, spreading darkness radiating outward from the site like ink in water. "He's coding," Sarah shouted. "V-fib! Charge the defibrillator." Brennan was frantically trying to control the situation, but his hands were shaking. "What the hell is happening?" "Binary toxin," Evelyn said from the doorway, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You activated it with the heat. He's got maybe 2 minutes before complete system failure." "You!" Brennan spun on her, his face twisted with rage and fear. "You told me to cauterize. You said it was safe." "No, I said you should definitely do it. I was hoping the agent would stop you. He didn't." "You're insane. Get her out of here." The senior agent stepped between them. "Can you save him?" Evelyn assessed the situation with the kind of cold calculation that came from years of making impossible decisions. "Maybe, if you get everyone else out and let me work." "She's not even a trauma," Brennan started. "Out," the agent ordered. "Everyone except her. Now. This is my patient. My operating room. You can't just—" 2 more agents entered the trauma bay, and their hands weren't near their weapons anymore. Their hands were on their weapons. "Doctor, you need to leave, immediately." Brennan looked between them, his face cycling through disbelief, fury, and finally the dawning realization that something much larger than his ego was in play. "This is insane. You're all insane. I'm calling hospital administration. Call whoever you want from the hallway, doctor." Sarah Chen was the last to leave, her eyes wide as she looked at Evelyn. "Do you even know what you're doing?" Evelyn was already moving toward the patient, her limp forgotten, her cane left propped against the wall. "Better than anyone in this building, Nurse Chen. Close the door behind you." The trauma bay door clicked shut, leaving Evelyn alone with a dying man, a team of federal agents watching through the observation window, and a clock that was counting down to catastrophic failure. She pulled on fresh gloves, her movements swift and certain despite the tremor in her bad leg. The patient's vitals were cratering, blood pressure dropping, oxygen saturation falling, heart rhythm deteriorating into chaos. "Angel 6 to any listening station," she said, knowing the agent's communication devices would pick it up. "I need immediate deployment of Compound 7 antidote, emergency authorization. Patient weight approximately 90 kilograms, exposure is dermal and systemic. Time to complete organ failure is 90 seconds or less." Through the observation window, she saw the senior agent speaking rapidly into his phone. "Antidote is not available on site," came the response through the room's intercom. "Nearest cache is at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Flight time minimum 40 minutes. He'll be dead in 2. Can you stabilize?" Evelyn looked at the monitors, at the poison spreading through the patient's system, at the specific way the compound was attacking cellular function. She'd seen this before. She'd developed countermeasures for this before. But that was in a fully equipped military medical facility with a team of specialists and unlimited resources. This was a civilian hospital with standard equipment and no support. "I can try," she said, "but I need complete autonomy. No second-guessing, no interference, no doctor with a hero complex bursting in to overrule my decisions. Clear? You have full operational authority. Save him." Evelyn's hands moved with the kind of precision that came from muscle memory older than her time at Cascade Medical, older than anyone in this building knew. She began by stopping what Brennan had started, using a specialized extraction technique to remove the embedded fragments without further heat activation. Each piece came out cleanly, dropped into a collection dish that she immediately sealed. The pattern confirmed what she'd suspected. This wasn't a simple assassination attempt. This was sophisticated, military-grade bioweapon deployment designed to look like battlefield injuries. Someone had tried very hard to make sure this man didn't survive. "I need activated charcoal suspension, highest concentration available," she called out. and sodium thiosulfate, 50 milliliters IV push, followed by continuous infusion. The intercom crackled. Those aren't standard protocols for trauma. They're standard protocols for heavy metal and compound poisoning. Get them, now. 3 minutes later, supplies began appearing through the trauma bay access door, passed in by agents who'd raided the hospital pharmacy under emergency federal authority. Evelyn worked steadily, administering counteragents, monitoring responses, adjusting dosages based on the patient's deteriorating vitals. The man coded twice. Both times, Evelyn brought him back with a combination of drugs and manual intervention that shouldn't have worked according to any textbook. But textbooks weren't written for situations like this. "Package is stabilizing," she reported, her voice steady despite the sweat running down her back. "But he needs the antidote. Whatever you're doing to get it here, do it faster." Helicopter is in the air. ETA 22 minutes. He might not have 22 minutes. Make him have it, Angel 6. That's an order. Evelyn almost smiled. Orders. She'd spent the last 8 months taking orders from people who didn't know what she was, what she'd been, what she could do. And now the world had shifted, and suddenly everyone was remembering why call signs existed. Through the observation window, she could see a crowd gathering. Hospital staff, curious about the federal takeover of their trauma bay. She could see Brennan there, his face red with fury, his hands gesturing wildly as he argued with someone in administration. She could see Patricia Odom, the charge nurse, staring through the glass with an expression of complete confusion. And she could see Sarah Chen, the young nurse who'd first noticed the wrong material in the wound, watching Evelyn work with the dawning realization that nothing about this situation was normal. "Vital signs stabilizing," Evelyn announced. "Blood pressure rising to acceptable range. Heart rhythm normalizing. Oxygen saturation improving. He's going to make it to the antidote." "Outstanding work, Angel 6. Don't congratulate me yet. We still have to get him through the next 20 minutes without complete system failure." Those 20 minutes felt like hours. Evelyn monitored every fluctuation, adjusted every variable, fought for every heartbeat. The patient remained unconscious but alive, his body hanging on through sheer biological stubbornness and whatever cocktail of drugs Evelyn was pumping through his system. At minute 18, the patient's vitals began to crash again. At minute 19, Evelyn was performing manual chest compressions while simultaneously trying to administer additional stabilizing agents. At minute 20, the trauma bay door burst open, and a team in hazmat suits rushed in carrying a sealed medical case with biohazard warnings plastered across every surface. "Antidote delivery," the lead tech announced. "Authorization code Whiskey 79er Alpha." "Confirmed," Evelyn responded without breaking rhythm on the chest compressions. "Dosage calculation for 90-kilogram male with advanced systemic exposure. 40 milliliters IV push, followed by 60 milliliters slow infusion over 6 hours. Prep it. I'll maintain manual circulation." The antidote went in clean. For 30 seconds, nothing changed. Then the monitors began to stabilize, not dramatically, but steadily, like a ship righting itself after a storm. "We have sinus rhythm," one of the hazmat techs called out. "Blood pressure responding. O2 sat climbing." Evelyn stepped back from the table, her hands finally still, her bad legs screaming from the extended period of standing. She pulled off her gloves and dropped them in biohazard disposal, then retrieved her cane from where she'd left it against the wall. "Package is secure," she said quietly. "He'll need intensive monitoring for the next 72 hours, but he'll survive." Through the observation window, she could see Brennan's face. The fury was gone now, replaced by something else. Confusion. Fear. The realization that he'd nearly killed someone very important while simultaneously humiliating someone very dangerous. The senior federal agent entered the trauma bay, his expression carefully neutral. "Ma'am, we'll need you to remain available for debriefing." "I'm still on shift," Evelyn said, "or was until I was fired approximately 45 minutes ago." "About that?" The agent glanced toward the observation window where hospital administrators were now clustered. "I think you'll find your employment status has changed significantly." "Has it?" Evelyn's tone made it clear she didn't much care either way. "The man you just saved is General Raymond Caldwell, Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence. The attack on his convoy was a targeted assassination attempt using advanced bioweaponry. You just prevented a major national security crisis. I prevented a man from dying. The politics aren't my concern. They should be, considering what's about to happen. Before Evelyn could ask what that meant, the distinct sound of rotor blades cut through the rain. Not one helicopter, multiple. The agent checked his phone. Right on schedule. What's on schedule? The part where everyone in this hospital learns exactly who you are. Outside the trauma bay windows, the Seattle night sky lit up with searchlights as 4 military helicopters descended toward the hospital's rooftop landing pad. Through the observation window, Evelyn could see the crowd of hospital staff reacting, phones coming out, faces pressed against glass. And she could see Marcus Brennan, the brilliant trauma surgeon who'd called her dead weight, watching the helicopters land with the expression of someone who'd just realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. The intercom crackled to life with the hospital operator's confused voice. Attention all personnel. We have multiple military aircraft landing on the roof. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not... The senior agent smiled slightly. They're not here for the general, ma'am. He's being transferred to a secure military medical facility. The helicopters are here because someone very high up the chain of command wants to make absolutely certain that everyone in this building understands that you are not to be touched, dismissed, disrespected, or doubted. Ever again. Evelyn leaned on her cane, watching through the window as armed Marines began filing into the hospital corridors. That seems excessive. With respect, ma'am, you've been off the grid for 8 months. A lot of people thought you were dead. Some people hoped you were dead. And now you've surfaced in the middle of a high-level assassination attempt, saved a general's life, and exposed a major security breach. Excessive is exactly what this situation calls for. Through the observation window, Evelyn watched Marcus Brennan's face as the first Marine appeared in the trauma floor corridor, rifle at ready, scanning for threats. She watched his expression shift from confusion to growing dread as more soldiers appeared, as federal agents began establishing a perimeter, as the entire hospital transformed into a secured military zone. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The trauma bay door opened again, and a Marine captain entered, his uniform immaculate despite the rain, his bearing suggesting someone who'd seen combat and come out harder for it. Captain Miller, ma'am, he said, saluting Evelyn with the kind of respect usually reserved for flag officers. We have orders to secure you and escort you to a safe location for debriefing. I'm in the middle of a shift, Captain. With respect, ma'am, your shift just ended. By direct order of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you are being recalled to active consultation status effective immediately. Evelyn glanced at the patient, General Caldwell, now surrounded by military medical personnel who were preparing him for transfer. He'll be fine. He'll receive the best care available thanks to you. Then I suppose I don't have much choice. No, ma'am. But before we go... The captain stepped aside as 2 more Marines entered, carrying between them what looked like a large evidence case. They set it down and opened it to reveal Evelyn's full dress uniform, complete with rank insignia and a row of medals that made the senior federal agent's eyes widen. We thought you might want to change out of scrubs before meeting with command, Lieutenant Colonel Kane. The observation window crowd had grown larger. Evelyn could see faces she recognized, nurses she'd worked with, doctors she'd deferred to, administrators who'd processed her paperwork as a simple staff nurse. They were all staring now, trying to reconcile the limping night shift nurse with the military officer standing in front of them. And in the center of that crowd, Marcus Brennan stood frozen, his face the color of old paper, as the full weight of what he'd done crashed down on him. Evelyn looked at the uniform, at the rank she'd walked away from 8 months ago, at the life she'd thought she'd left behind. Then she looked at her cane, at her civilian scrubs, at the simple existence she'd built for herself in the shadows. I'll change, she said finally, but I'm keeping the cane. The captain almost smiled. Wouldn't expect anything less, ma'am. As Evelyn took the uniform and headed toward the changing area, she passed close to the observation window. For just a moment, her eyes met Marcus Brennan's through the glass. She didn't smile, didn't glare, didn't acknowledge him at all beyond that single, cold moment of eye contact. But that moment was enough. In it, Brennan saw everything he'd missed, the steel beneath the limp, the authority beneath the silence, the danger beneath the dismissal. He saw exactly what he'd mocked, what he'd belittled, what he'd ordered away from his pristine trauma bay, and he saw his career ending in real time. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and the helicopters waited with their rotors still spinning, and somewhere in the hospital's administrative offices, phones were ringing with calls that would change everything. But in that moment, in that single exchange of glances through reinforced glass, justice was already being served one devastating second at a time. The changing room was smaller than she remembered military spaces being, but then again, this was a civilian hospital hastily converted into a command post. Evelyn stood before the mirror, her civilian scrubs folded neatly on the bench beside her, the uniform laid out with precision that spoke of ceremony rather than necessity. Lieutenant Colonel. The rank insignia felt heavier than it should have, small pieces of metal that carried the weight of decisions made in places most people never knew existed. Her hands traced the ribbons, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Defense Superior Service Medal, and others that didn't have public names because the operations they represented didn't have public acknowledgement. The door opened without warning. Captain Miller stood in the threshold, his expression apologetic but firm. "Ma'am, we have a situation developing." Evelyn pulled on the uniform jacket, her fingers working the buttons with muscle memory. "What kind of situation?" "Doctor, Brennan is attempting to leave the hospital. He's claiming medical emergency at another facility, but intelligence suggests he's about to run." "Let him." Evelyn adjusted her collar, checked the fit across her shoulders. The uniform still fit perfectly despite 8 months of civilian life. Some things you didn't lose. "Ma'am, with respect, command wants him contained. He was exposed to classified medical protocols during the operation. He saw techniques that aren't supposed to exist outside secure facilities." Evelyn turned from the mirror, her cane in one hand, her officer's cap in the other. "Captain, Dr. Brennan is a brilliant trauma surgeon with an ego problem and spectacularly poor judgment. He's not a security risk. He's just a man who realized he destroyed his career in the span of 45 minutes. Command doesn't see it that way. Then Command can take it up with me directly." Evelyn moved past him into the hallway, her limp still present but somehow less diminished now, as if the uniform had redistributed the weight of old injuries. "Where is he?" "Main entrance, trying to get past the perimeter." The hospital had transformed in the 20 minutes since the helicopters landed. Federal agents occupied every access point. Marines patrolled the corridors with the casual alertness of soldiers who expected trouble, and the entire building hummed with the tension of a military operation overlaid on civilian infrastructure. Evelyn moved through it all with Captain Miller at her shoulder, drawing stares from hospital staff, who'd seen her limp through their halls for months without ever imagining this. A nurse she'd shared countless night shifts with actually stepped back against the wall as Evelyn passed, eyes wide. The main entrance was a tableau of barely controlled chaos. Marcus Brennan stood at the center, his surgical scrubs exchanged for street clothes, a bag slung over his shoulder, arguing with 2 federal agents who looked professionally unmoved by his protests. "I have patients at Seattle Grace who need my expertise," Brennan was saying, his voice carrying the forced authority of someone whose power had evaporated. "You can't just hold me here without cause." "Doctor, you were present during a classified medical operation," one of the agents replied, his tone suggesting he'd repeated this explanation multiple times already. "That makes you a material witness requiring debriefing." "I'm a trauma surgeon, not a spy. I don't know anything classified." "You know enough." Brennan's eyes found Evelyn as she approached, and something ugly flickered across his face. "This is your doing. You set this up. Some kind of revenge for what, Doctor?" Evelyn stopped 3 feet from him, her posture military straight despite the cane. "For you mocking my injury? For calling me dead weight? For publicly humiliating me in front of the entire trauma staff?" She paused, letting the silence stretch. "I didn't set anything up. I just saved a man's life while you were preparing to kill him with your arrogance. I was following standard trauma protocols. Standard protocols that would have activated a binary toxin and caused systemic failure in 90 seconds. Yes, I remember. I was there. I warned you. You didn't listen." Brennan's face flushed red. "You told me to cauterize. You said it was safe." "I said you should definitely do it. Not the same thing. I was hoping the federal agent would override you based on my warning. He didn't move fast enough. You did." Evelyn shifted her weight, her bad leg protesting the extended standing. "But that's not why you're trying to run, is it?" "I'm not running. I have professional obligations." You have professional terror. Evelyn's voice dropped, quiet enough that only Brennan and the immediate circle could hear. You spent 6 weeks at this hospital, establishing your authority, making sure everyone knew you were the smartest person in every room, the most skilled surgeon, the unquestionable expert. And then in one night, a limping nurse you dismissed as worthless performed medical procedures you didn't recognize, saved a patient you'd nearly killed, and revealed herself to be military intelligence with clearance levels you couldn't imagine. Your entire self-image shattered in 45 minutes. So yes, you're running, not from federal debriefing, from humiliation. The agents exchanged glances. Captain Miller remained silent, watching the exchange with the careful neutrality of someone who knew not to interrupt a superior officer. Brennan's hands clenched into fists. You think you're better than me because you have some secret military background? I save lives every day, real lives. Civilians who need actual medical care, not whatever black ops nonsense you're involved in. I'm sure you do, Doctor. And you're probably very good at it when your ego doesn't get in the way. Evelyn turned to the agents. He can go. He's not a security risk. Ma'am, our orders are superseded by mine as of 20 minutes ago when I accepted recall to active consultation status. Dr. Brennan will sign a standard non-disclosure agreement, undergo a brief interview about what he observed, and then be released. Holding him serves no purpose except to make him feel more important than he is. One of the agents spoke into his radio, listened to the response, then nodded. Confirmed. NDA and interview protocol authorized. Brennan looked between them, his expression cycling through relief and renewed anger. Just like that? You're letting me go? Just like that, Evelyn confirmed, though I suspect you'll find your employment situation here has become complicated. Hospital administration tends to frown on doctors who nearly kill high-value federal patients through negligence. It wasn't negligence. I didn't know You knew I warned you. You knew I identified the material as dangerous. You chose to ignore me because I was just a limping nurse who couldn't possibly know more than you. Evelyn's voice remained level, clinical, delivering facts without emotion. That's the definition of negligence, Doctor. Pride-based negligence, which is arguably worse than incompetence. Before Brennan could respond, a commotion erupted from the elevator bay. Patricia Odom, the charge nurse, was arguing with a Marine who was blocking her path, her voice sharp with professional frustration. I don't care about your security perimeter. I need to check on my staff. You've locked down an entire hospital without explanation, terrified half my nurses, and turned our trauma bay into a military command post. The Marine remained unmoved. Ma'am, this floor is restricted. This floor is my responsibility. I have patients who need care, staff who need direction, and a hospital to run. Evelyn caught Captain Miller's eye and nodded. He signaled the Marine, who stepped aside. Patricia strode forward, her professional composure intact but clearly strained, stopping short when she saw Evelyn in full uniform. Evelyn? The name came out uncertain, as if Patricia wasn't sure it still applied. What the hell is going on? Complication during a high-security patient transfer, Evelyn said simply. It's being resolved. Resolved? The military invaded our hospital. We have armed soldiers in the hallways. The trauma bay is sealed off, and you're... Patricia gestured at the uniform, words failing her. Who are you? Same person I was 6 hours ago, just wearing different clothes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. Evelyn softened her tone slightly. I know this is disruptive. I know you have questions, but the patient is stable, the security situation is contained, and normal operations will resume shortly. Patricia stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head. I've had you on my staff for 8 months. 8 months. You took every night shift nobody wanted, never complained, never caused problems, never gave me reason to think you were anything except a competent nurse with a mysterious past. And now I find out you're military intelligence with enough authority to override federal agents? I'm a nurse who used to be military intelligence. There's a difference. Is there? Patricia's voice carried hurt beneath the anger. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were lying to all of us about who you were. The accusation hung in the air, and Evelyn felt the weight of it. She'd spent 8 months building a quiet life, earning trust through consistency, creating a space where she could just be a nurse doing her job. And now that space was gone, burned away by circumstances she'd tried to avoid. I never lied about my nursing credentials. Evelyn said quietly. Everything on my application was true. I am a registered nurse. I do have 15 years of emergency medicine experience. I just didn't mention that most of that experience was in combat zones and classified medical facilities. That's a pretty significant omission. It was necessary, for my safety and for others. And now? Evelyn glanced at Captain Miller, at the federal agents, at the Marines maintaining perimeter security throughout the hospital. Now circumstances have changed. Patricia followed her gaze, taking in the full scope of the military presence. That patient we brought in, he's important enough for all this? He's important enough that someone tried to kill him with sophisticated bioweaponry designed to activate during routine surgical procedures. Yes, he's important. And you knew how to counter it because I've seen this kind of attack before, developed protocols for it, trained others how to recognize and respond to it. Evelyn shifted her weight, her legs sending sharp protests up her spine. I wasn't supposed to use any of that knowledge again. I was retired. Done. But when I saw the wound pattern, I couldn't just walk away. Even after Brennan humiliated you. Especially after that. Because if I'd let my ego dictate my actions the way he let his ego dictate his, a man would be dead right now. Evelyn met Patricia's eyes directly. I don't need recognition or respect to do what's right. I just need to see what needs doing and do it. Patricia's expression shifted, some of the anger fading into something more complex. The other nurses are scared. They don't understand what's happening. Sarah Chen is convinced she's going to be arrested for something. Can you at least reassure my staff? Your staff is not in any trouble. They performed admirably under difficult circumstances, especially Nurse Chen. She was right about the material being wrong. She just didn't have the context to understand why. Will you tell them that yourself? Evelyn hesitated. The last thing she wanted was to stand in front of the nursing staff who'd worked beside her, eaten lunch with her, shared the mundane intimacies of night shift life, and explain why she'd hidden her past. But Patricia was right. They deserved something. I'll talk to them, Evelyn agreed. But first I need to complete my debriefing with command. Can you gather interested staff in the conference room in 1 hour? Patricia nodded, then paused. Evelyn, Lieutenant Colonel, whatever I'm supposed to call you now. That injury you have, the one Brennan mocked, where did it come from? The question was gentle but direct, and Evelyn appreciated the lack of artifice. Kandahar Province, 2019, Field Hospital came under direct attack. I was extracting wounded when part of the ceiling collapsed, crushed my leg, severed nerves, broke bones in 17 places. They wanted to amputate. I convinced them otherwise. And you can still practice nursing with that injury? I can practice nursing because of that injury. It reminds me every day that survival isn't about being perfect or whole. It's about adapting, compensating, and refusing to let limitations define capability. Evelyn's voice carried the weight of hard-won truth. Dr. Brennan saw my limp and assumed weakness. He was wrong. My limp is evidence of strength. Patricia nodded slowly, processing. I'll gather the staff. 1 hour. As Patricia left, Evelyn became aware of another presence in the entrance area. Sarah Chen stood near the reception desk, still in her scrubs, her young face pale with exhaustion and confusion. She'd clearly overheard at least part of the conversation. Nurse Chen, Evelyn acknowledged her. Sarah approached cautiously, as if Evelyn had transformed into something dangerous. I was right, wasn't I? About the material in the wound. It was wrong. You were absolutely right. Your observation was critical. But you told Dr. Brennan to proceed anyway. You told him it was safe. I told him he should definitely do it. I was hoping the federal agent would intervene based on my earlier warning. It was a calculated risk. You risked a patient's life on a calculated risk? Sarah's voice climbed with disbelief. I risked trying to maintain my cover while still preventing disaster. It didn't work cleanly. The agent didn't move fast enough. But I had contingency plans, which is why the patient survived. Evelyn studied the younger nurse's face, seeing the struggle between admiration and doubt. You're questioning whether you can trust my judgment now. I'm questioning whether I ever knew you at all. Fair enough. For what it's worth, everything I taught you about patient care, about triage priority, about maintaining calm in chaos, all of that was real. My background doesn't change the validity of those lessons. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then asked the question Evelyn had been expecting. Why work here? If you have all this training, all this experience, why take night shifts at a mid-tier trauma center? Because after 15 years of combat medicine, of treating injuries that shouldn't exist, of losing patients to weapons that violate every convention of warfare, I needed to remember what normal medicine felt like. I needed to treat car accidents and kitchen burns and heart attacks. Simple human suffering with simple human solutions. Evelyn's voice softened. I needed to remember that medicine could be about healing, not just damage control. And now you're being pulled back into the other kind. Apparently so. Before Sarah could respond, Captain Miller appeared at Evelyn's elbow. Ma'am, command is ready for your debrief. The secure line is established in the hospital administrator's office. Evelyn nodded, then turned back to Sarah. You did good work tonight. Trust that instinct that told you something was wrong. It'll serve you well. The walk to the administrator's office took them through corridors that were slowly returning to normal function, though the military presence remained obvious. Evelyn caught glimpses of patients in rooms, some sleeping, others staring at the unusual activity with varying degrees of concern. The administrator's office had been converted into a temporary command post with frightening efficiency. Secure communication equipment filled the desk, encryption devices blinked with status lights, and a large screen displayed a secure video feed showing 3 figures, 2 in military dress uniforms, 1 in civilian suit. Lieutenant Colonel Kane, the central figure said, his voice carrying the gravel of someone who'd spent decades barking orders. Major General William Thorpe, Defense Intelligence Agency. It's been too long. Evelyn came to attention despite her cane, offering a crisp salute. General Thorpe, I wasn't aware you were still in active command. They keep trying to retire me. I keep refusing. Sit down before you fall down, Evelyn. I know that leg's giving you hell. Evelyn lowered herself into the office chair, grateful despite herself. The adrenaline from the emergency was fading, leaving pain in its wake. I assume this isn't a social call. You assume correctly. What you stumbled into tonight was the 3rd attempt on General Caldwell's life in 6 months. Someone wants him dead badly enough to deploy advanced bioweaponry in a civilian hospital. That suggests either desperation or resources we haven't accounted for. Or both, added the civilian, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. Director Helen Marsh, CIA Counterintelligence. The compound used in tonight's attack didn't come from any known state actor. The chemical signature is novel, the delivery system is innovative, and the triggering mechanism shows understanding of modern trauma protocols. Meaning someone studied how we treat wounded, Evelyn concluded. Built a weapon specifically designed to kill during surgery. Precisely. And you're one of maybe 6 people in the country who would have recognized it in time to intervene. Marsh leaned forward. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question. How did you end up in the exact hospital where this attack occurred? The implication hung heavy. Evelyn met Marsh's gaze without flinching. Are you asking if I'm compromised, Director? I'm asking if your presence here was coincidence or coordination. Helen, General Thorpe warned, but Marsh continued. You disappear from the grid 8 months ago. No forwarding address, no contact with former colleagues, no explanation. You surface working under an assumed identity at a civilian hospital in Seattle. And then coincidentally, you're on shift when a high-value target is brought in after an assassination attempt using weapons you're uniquely qualified to counter. Marsh's tone remained professionally neutral, but the accusation was clear. You see how that pattern creates questions. Evelyn felt Captain Miller tense beside her, but she kept her own voice level. I'm working under my real identity, Director. Evelyn Kane, RN, licensed in Washington State with credentials verified through proper channels. No assumption, no deception beyond omitting my military service, which is standard protocol for retired intelligence personnel establishing civilian lives. Retired, Marsh repeated. That's an interesting word choice considering you accepted recall tonight. Your recall was presented as non-optional. Everything is optional, Colonel. You could have refused, walked away, let someone else handle the situation. And let General Caldwell die? No, that wasn't optional. The 3rd figure on the screen spoke for the first time. Colonel David Chen, Army Intelligence. Director Marsh, with respect, Lieutenant Colonel Kane's service record speaks for itself. 15 years of exemplary performance, multiple commendations, zero indicators of compromise. Questioning her loyalty based on geographic coincidence is unproductive. Coincidence bothers me, Colonel, especially expensive ones. We've lost 3 secure facilities to breaches in the last year. Each time, someone with access and expertise was in the right place at the wrong time. Marsh's eyes remained fixed on Evelyn. I need to know you're not that someone. Evelyn understood what was happening now. This wasn't just a debriefing about tonight's events. This was an interrogation masked as professional concern, triggered by deeper suspicions about ongoing security failures. Director, I left active service because I was tired of seeing people die from weapons that shouldn't exist. I took a nursing job in Seattle because it's far from DC, far from military installations, far from anything connected to my previous life. I chose Cascade Medical specifically because it was ordinary, mid-tier trauma center, standard ER cases, nothing classified or complex. Evelyn leaned forward despite the pain in her leg. If I were compromised, if I were working for hostile interests, I would have let General Caldwell die tonight. I would have stood back and watched Dr. Brennan activate that compound. Instead, I blew my cover, revealed my identity, and saved his life using techniques that are now going to trigger security reviews across multiple agencies. Does that sound like enemy action to you? Marsh was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. No. It sounds like someone who defaulted to mission priority despite personal cost, which is exactly what your record suggests you'd do. She glanced at something off-screen. My apologies, Colonel. Security paranoia is an occupational hazard. Apology accepted, Director. For what it's worth, I understand the suspicion. The timing is too convenient to ignore. Which brings us to the actual question, General Thorpe interjected. Was it coincidence, or did someone know you were there? The question sent ice down Evelyn's spine. She'd been so focused on defending against accusations of complicity that she hadn't considered the other possibility, that she'd been deliberately exposed. The attack on General Caldwell's convoy happened 3 miles from the hospital, Colonel Chen said, pulling up a tactical map on the screen. His protective detail had protocols for multiple trauma centers in the Seattle area, but they chose Cascade Medical. The decision was made by the ranking agent on scene, Special Agent Marcus Webb, based on proximity and capability. Is Webb being questioned? Evelyn asked. Webb died in the initial attack, vehicle explosion, no survivors from the lead car. Chen zoomed the map, highlighting the attack location. But here's what's interesting. The convoy's route was classified. Only 6 people knew where General Caldwell would be tonight. 3 are dead, 2 are accounted for in secure facilities, and 1 is standing in front of you. General Thorpe's face hardened. General Caldwell himself. Someone got to him, extracted his schedule, planned the attack, and may have known about his backup medical protocols, including which hospitals his detail would choose. But they didn't know I was there, Evelyn said slowly, working through the logic. Or if they did, they assumed I wouldn't reveal myself. The bioweapon was designed to kill during standard trauma surgery. If I'd stayed hidden, stayed quiet, it would have worked. Unless revealing you was part of the plan, Marsh suggested. Draw you out of hiding, expose you to counterintelligence scrutiny, undermine your credibility by making your presence seem suspicious. Evelyn felt the trap closing from all sides. Either she was compromised and deliberately positioned to be present, or she'd been maneuvered into a situation designed to destroy her reputation regardless of her actions. Classic intelligence warfare, turning operational success into strategic failure. So what now? She asked. Full investigation? Polygraph? Isolation while you determine if I'm a threat? General Thorpe shook his head. Now we use you as bait. If someone went to all this trouble to expose you, they'll make a move, either to recruit you, silence you, or discredit you further. We watch, we wait, and we catch them when they surface. That's a terrible plan, General. It's the only plan that gives us actionable intelligence. Unless you have a better suggestion? Evelyn didn't. The strategic logic was sound, even if personally catastrophic. How long? Unknown. Could be days, could be months. You'll maintain your cover at the hospital. My cover is blown. The entire staff knows I'm military intelligence now. Then we adjust the cover. You're a retired officer doing consulting work, maintaining nursing credentials for personal fulfillment, close enough to truth to be believable. Thorpe's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't what you wanted, Evelyn, but someone just tried to kill a ranking intelligence officer using weapons that suggest significant enemy capability. We need to know who, why, and how they knew to do it tonight. Before Evelyn could respond, alarms screamed through the hospital. Not the usual medical codes, but something sharper, more urgent. Captain Miller's radio crackled with rapid-fire communications that made his face go pale. General, we have a breach, he reported. Unknown hostile entering the building through the loading dock. Armed. Professional-grade tactical gear. 2 casualties already. The screen split, showing security footage from hospital cameras. A figure moved through the corridors with lethal efficiency, weapon raised, heading directly toward the secure wing where General Caldwell was being prepared for transfer. Lockdown protocols now, Thorpe ordered. Get Kane to safety and... Belay that, Evelyn interrupted, already rising from the chair despite screaming protests from her leg. That hostile is heading for Caldwell. He's still vulnerable during transfer prep. We need to intercept. You're not combat rated anymore, Marsh objected. Your injury means I understand limitations and compensate accordingly. Captain, what's our fastest route to the secure wing? Miller looked to the screen for authorization. General Thorpe hesitated only a moment before nodding. Get her there. But Kane, your observation and intelligence only. Let the Marines handle combat. Evelyn was already moving toward the door, her cane discarded, accepting the pain as necessary cost. Understood, General. Observation only. But as she and Captain Miller ran toward the secure wing, as alarms continued to scream and Marines mobilized throughout the building, Evelyn knew that observation was never only observation when lives hung in the balance. And somewhere in the chaos, someone was counting on exactly that. The corridor erupted into controlled chaos as Marines converged from multiple directions, their movements precise and coordinated despite the sudden threat. Evelyn moved with Captain Miller through the flow of armed personnel, her injured leg screaming with each stride, but her mind calculating angles, timing, tactical probabilities. Hostile is moving fast, Miller reported, one hand pressed to his earpiece. Professional training evident. Avoided 2 security checkpoints, neutralized cameras in zones 4 and 6. Knows our layout, which meant intelligence breach or inside assistance. Evelyn filed that conclusion away for later analysis, focusing on immediate tactical reality. The secure wing, where General Caldwell was being prepped for transfer, lay 3 corridors ahead, protected by reinforced doors and a dedicated Marine fire team. But those protections assumed attack from outside the perimeter, not someone already inside. They rounded the corner into the main corridor and nearly collided with Patricia Odom, who was herding 3 nurses away from the restricted zone. Everyone's supposed to shelter in place, Patricia said, her professional calm strained but holding. Why are you running toward the threat? Because the threat is running toward a patient who can't be moved yet, Evelyn replied without slowing. Get your people to the cafeteria, Patricia. Lock the doors. Don't open them until you get all clear from military command. Evelyn, not a request. Move. Now. Patricia's eyes widened at the command voice. Officer tone, not nurse suggestion, but she nodded and redirected her group. Evelyn heard their footsteps receding as she and Miller reached the security station outside the secure wing. The 2 Marines posted there had their weapons raised, covering the corridor approaches with disciplined intensity. The senior guard, Corporal Hayes, according to his name tape, acknowledged Miller with a curt nod. Sir, hostile last seen approaching from the east stairwell. We've locked down the wing. General Caldwell is in transfer prep with full protective detail. Visual on the hostile? Evelyn asked. Hayes glanced at her uniform, registered the rank, responded without hesitation. Negative, ma'am. Camera coverage is compromised in his approach vector. He's ghost-walking our surveillance, which confirmed professional-grade training and detailed knowledge of hospital security infrastructure. This wasn't opportunistic violence. This was a surgical strike by someone who'd prepared extensively. Miller's radio crackled with an update that made his jaw tighten. Be advised, explosive device detected in the main lobby. Bomb squad responding. Appears to be distraction grade, not structural threat. He He's channeling response, Evelyn said immediately, drawing assets away from the actual target. Classic misdirection. The lights flickered once, twice, then emergency lighting kicked in as primary power died. Red emergency bulbs cast the corridor in hellish shadow, and somewhere in the building, backup generators whined to life. Power grid sabotage, Hayes reported, checking his weapon's optic. Backup systems engaging, but we've lost main surveillance. Evelyn's tactical assessment sharpened. Whoever planned this had studied hospital infrastructure, marine security protocols, and emergency response procedures. They knew exactly how to create maximum chaos while maintaining operational focus on the primary target. Captain, we need to assume the hostile has multiple objectives, she said quietly. Caldwell is primary, but killing him might not be the only goal. Creating a security failure this visible sends a message, demonstrates capability, undermines confidence. You think this is theater? I think this is a statement. Someone wants the intelligence community to know they can strike high-value targets in supposedly secure locations. Evelyn's mind raced through implications, which means casualties beyond Caldwell might be acceptable collateral. They might even be desired. Before Miller could respond, gunfire erupted from somewhere deeper in the building. Not the controlled bursts of military engagement, but the sustained automatic fire of someone laying down suppressive coverage. Marines further down the corridor moved toward the sound, coordinating over radio, establishing fields of fire. Then silence. Terrible, absolute silence that meant either the hostile was down or had accomplished whatever that firefight was meant to achieve. All units, hostile is no longer in eastern sector, came the radio report. Casualties reported, 2 Marines wounded, hostile evaded containment. Last vector suggests movement toward. The secure wing doors exploded inward. Not from explosive breach, the doors were rated against that. From someone who had legitimate access credentials and had just used them. The reinforced panels swung open, revealing a figure in tactical black, face obscured by balaclava and night vision goggles, weapon raised and tracking for targets with professional speed. Hayes and his partner returned fire immediately, their rounds sparking off the door frame as the hostile dove sideways into cover. Evelyn pulled Miller back around the corner, her hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm she no longer carried. "He has access codes," Miller shouted over the gunfire. "How does he have our codes?" Someone inside had given them, or the codes had been compromised through signals intelligence, or the hostile had captured them from the casualties he'd already created. All bad options. None changed immediate tactical reality. The firefight lasted 18 seconds. Controlled bursts from the Marines, answering fire from the hostile that was precise enough to keep them pinned, but not aggressive enough to suggest he wanted extended engagement. This was suppression, not elimination. He was buying time for something else. "Grenade!" Hayes screamed, and the corridor erupted in smoke and light. Flashbang, not fragmentation. Disorientation weapon. Evelyn closed her eyes and covered her ears a half second before detonation. Military training overriding civilian instinct. The concussive wave slammed through the corridor, rattling her bones. But when she opened her eyes, she could still see through the smoke. The hostile was through the secure wing doors and moving toward Caldwell's transfer room. Evelyn was moving before conscious decision, her injured leg forgotten in the surge of adrenaline and operational necessity. Miller shouted something behind her, but the words were lost in the ringing aftermath of the flashbang. She crossed the threshold into the secure wing, where emergency lighting painted everything in blood-red shadows. The hostile was 30 feet ahead, moving with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly where his target was located. Evelyn could hear shouting from Caldwell's room, the protective detail engaging, and the hostile raised his weapon as he approached the door. "Federal agent," Evelyn shouted, the lie automatic and tactically useful. "Stand down now, or you will be shot." The hostile pivoted with professional speed, weapon tracking toward her voice. Evelyn dove sideways into a patient room doorway as rounds chewed into the wall where she'd been standing. Her leg collapsed beneath her and she went down hard, pain exploding up her spine, but her mind stayed coldly analytical. He'd fired center mass, professional targeting, but hadn't pursued into the room to confirm the kill. Mission-focused, not distracted by secondary targets. Good tactical discipline. Bad for stopping him. Evelyn pulled herself up using the door frame, looking for anything usable as a weapon. The patient room was empty, evacuated during lockdown, but medical equipment remained. 4 stands, monitoring devices, oxygen tanks. The oxygen tanks. She grabbed the nearest cylinder, a portable unit about 18 inches long, and moved back toward the doorway. The hostile had reached Caldwell's transfer room, and the firefight inside was brief and devastating. 2 shots, professional precision, then silence. The protective detail was down. Evelyn's tactical calculation shifted into desperate territory. Miller and the Marines were recovering from the flashbang, but still seconds away. The hostile was now in the room with General Caldwell, who was sedated, intubated, and helpless. Standard assassination would take 5 seconds, 2 rounds to the head, confirmation, exfiltration. But Standard didn't explain why the hostile wasn't already leaving. Evelyn moved to the doorway of Caldwell's room, oxygen tank held like an improvised club, and assessed the situation with one quick glance. The hostile stood over Caldwell's transfer gurney, weapon trained on the door, but his other hand held a syringe filled with amber liquid. Not shooting Caldwell, injecting him with something. "Step away from the patient," Evelyn ordered, knowing the words were futile but needing to buy seconds. The hostile's eyes, all she could see behind the tactical gear, registered her presence without apparent concern. He depressed the syringe plunger halfway, then paused deliberately, showing her he had time, showing her the injection was more important than speed. "You're not here to kill him," Evelyn realized. "You're here to deliver something. Another compound. Another weapon." The hostile's head tilted slightly. Acknowledgement or amusement, impossible to tell. He depressed the plunger another quarter, the amber liquid flowing into Caldwell's IV line. Behind Evelyn, boots pounded in the corridor. Miller and the Marines seconds away. The hostile knew it, and still he didn't rush. Still he maintained precise control over the injection rate, which meant the delivery mechanism mattered. Too fast, and whatever he was administering might not work correctly. This wasn't simple poison. This was something that required specific dosing, specific timing. Evelyn made her decision and threw the oxygen tank. Not at the hostile. He'd dodge or shoot it, and a ricochet in a room full of medical equipment and a helpless patient was unacceptable. She threw it at the IV stand, at the specific point where the hostile's injection connected to Caldwell's line. The tank hit perfectly, momentum and weight snapping the IV connection. The hostile's syringe separated from the main line, amber liquid spraying across the floor as the remaining dose was lost. The hostile's weapon tracked toward Evelyn with lethal speed, but Miller and 3 Marines crashed through the doorway behind her, weapons raised, fields of fire overlapping. The tactical calculation shifted instantly. The hostile was surrounded, outgunned, with primary mission now compromised. He did the last thing Evelyn expected. He dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "Don't shoot," he said, voice calm despite tactical catastrophe. "I surrender." Miller kept his weapon trained center mass while the Marines moved to secure the hostile, practiced efficiency, stripping away tactical gear, checking for additional weapons, securing wrists with flex cuffs. The balaclava came off, revealing a face that Evelyn didn't recognize. Mid-30s, unremarkable features, the kind of person who could disappear in any crowd. "Get medical in here now," Evelyn ordered, moving to Caldwell's bedside. The general was still unconscious, still breathing, monitors showing stable vitals. But half a syringe of unknown compound had entered his system before she'd broken the connection. "We need to know what was in that injection." Miller was already on the radio, calling for the hazmat team and military medical specialists. The Marines maintained weapons trained on the now compliant hostile, who knelt with hands secured behind his back, his expression oddly peaceful for someone who'd just failed a high-stakes assassination. "You're too late," the hostile said quietly, his eyes on Evelyn. "The delivery is complete. Half dose is sufficient for cascade activation." "Cascade activation of what?" "You'll see. Approximately 6 hours. Maybe less, depending on his metabolic rate." The hostile smiled. "You saved him from the first compound. Congratulations. But this one? There's no antidote, no counter protocol. Nothing in your considerable expertise can stop what's already begun." Evelyn fought the urge to hit him, to demand answers through force. But she knew interrogation wouldn't yield useful intelligence. He'd been trained to resist, and they didn't have time for proper extraction techniques. Instead, She turned to the spilled amber liquid on the floor, carefully collecting a sample with a syringe from the medical cart. The hazmat team could analyze it, identify the compound, maybe synthesize a response even if the hostile claimed it was impossible. "Who sent you?" Miller demanded, weapon still trained despite the hostile being secured. "Does it matter? The outcome is the same. General Caldwell will die. Not today, probably not tomorrow, but soon, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it." "We'll see about that," Evelyn said, sealing the sample and handing it to a hazmat technician who'd just arrived. "Full spectroscopic analysis, priority urgent. I need composition, mechanism of action, and potential countermeasures within 2 hours." The technician nodded and departed at a run. Evelyn turned back to the hostile, studying his face, his posture, the subtle tells that suggested either truth or very skilled deception. "You surrendered," she observed. "Professional operator with your training doesn't surrender unless capture serves the mission. What's your objective here?" The hostile's smile widened. "To demonstrate inevitability. To show that no matter how skilled you are, no matter how many protocols you know, some weapons can't be stopped. Some deaths can't be prevented." "That's philosophy, not tactics." "Philosophy drives tactics, Colonel Kane. Surely your experience taught you that." The use of her name and rank sent ice down Evelyn's spine. This hostile knew exactly who she was. This wasn't opportunistic. This was targeted, personal, designed specifically to confront her with a scenario she couldn't solve through conventional means. "Captain Miller, I want this hostile in maximum security isolation with zero outside contact," Evelyn ordered. "No phone calls, no legal representation, no communication of any kind until we determine what organization he's working for." "That violates," the hostile began. "Nothing," Evelyn interrupted. "You just engaged in armed assault on federal personnel, attempted assassination of a military intelligence officer, and deployment of potential bioweapons in a civilian hospital. You have no rights beyond breathing until we decide what to charge you with." The hostile's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, calculation, assessment, the realization that Evelyn wasn't bound by civilian legal constraints in this scenario. Marines hauled him to his feet and escorted him from the room. Evelyn watched him go, her mind already moving to next priorities. General Caldwell needed to be transferred to a military medical facility with bioweapons response capability. The hospital needed to be secured against additional threats, and she needed to understand what the hell had just been injected into a ranking intelligence officer under her watch. The secure video link in the corner of the transfer room activated, showing General Thorpe's face. "Colonel Kane, status report. Hostile neutralized and secured, sir. General Caldwell is stable but compromised. Unknown compound administered intravenously, partial dose. Hostile claims it will cause death within hours and has no known countermeasure. Hostile's claims are suspect until verified." "Agreed, but I recommend we proceed as if the threat is genuine. Caldwell needs immediate transfer to Fort Detrick or comparable facility with advanced biodefense capability." Thorpe nodded. "Already coordinating. Medical helicopter inbound, ETA 12 minutes. What's your assessment of the hostile's objectives?" Evelyn chose her words carefully, aware that her analysis would shape the intelligence community's response. "This was theater, sir. The attack was designed to demonstrate capability and inevitability. The hostile surrendered because capture serves whatever larger message this operation is meant to convey." "You think he wanted to be caught?" "I think he accomplished everything he came here to do, and surrender was always part of the plan." Evelyn glanced at the spilled amber liquid, at the broken IV connection, at the monitors still tracking Caldwell's vital signs. "Someone is making a statement about our vulnerability, about the limits of our defenses, and they're using General Caldwell as the medium for that message. Then we need to prove them wrong. Whatever's in his system, we find a counter. Whatever their plan is, we disrupt it. Understood?" "Understood, sir." The connection terminated, leaving Evelyn alone with the reality of tactical success that felt like strategic failure. She'd stopped the hostile, protected the patient, prevented full administration of the compound, but the hostile's calm certainty suggested that half measures might be sufficient for whatever cascade activation he'd mentioned. Sarah Chen appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. "Colonel Kane, I was told you needed nursing assistance for patient transfer prep. Evelyn blinked, surprised to see the younger nurse volunteering for what was clearly a dangerous assignment. Nurse Chen, this is now a military operation. Civilian personnel should remain in secured areas. With respect, ma'am, General Caldwell is still technically a patient in this hospital until transfer is complete. That makes him my responsibility as assigned nursing staff. Sarah's voice carried new steel, tempered by the night's events. Besides, you need someone who knows this patient's baseline vitals, current medication regimen, and transfer requirements. That's me. Evelyn studied her for a moment, seeing past the youth and inexperience to the core of professional determination. This was someone who understood duty beyond convenience, responsibility beyond safety. All right, but you follow my orders exactly. No deviation, no hesitation. Clear? Crystal clear, ma'am. Together they prepared Caldwell for transfer, working with the smooth efficiency of medical professionals who'd moved critical patients under pressure before. Sarah asked no questions about the tactical situation, focused entirely on clinical priorities, airway management, vital sign stability, IV access security. The medical helicopter's approach vibrated through the building, rotors beating a familiar rhythm that pulled at memories Evelyn had tried to bury. How many times had she supervised similar transfers in combat zones? How many dying soldiers had she loaded onto helicopters while under fire? Too many. Always too many. The transfer team arrived in full hazmat gear, their presence confirming that higher command was taking the bioweapon threat seriously. They brought portable containment equipment, advanced monitoring devices, and a sealed medical transport pod that looked like something from a science fiction film. Colonel Kane? The team leader's voice was muffled through his hazmat hood. Major Davidson, USAMRIID. We're here to transport the package to secure containment. He's stable for transport, but time-sensitive. Unknown compound in his system, partial dose, hostile claims, cascade activation within 6 hours. We're aware. Fort Detrick has biochemical response teams standing by. We'll have preliminary analysis within 90 minutes of arrival. Davidson directed his team with practiced efficiency, transferring Caldwell from the hospital gurney to the containment pod with movements that minimized jostling. You did good work tonight, Colonel. Stopped full administration, collected samples, preserved chain of custody. That gives us a fighting chance. Just make sure it's enough of a chance, Major. Roger that. The transfer team sealed Caldwell in the containment pod and began moving toward the rooftop landing pad. Sarah Chen watched them go, her expression troubled. Is he going to die? She asked quietly. I don't know, Evelyn admitted. We have samples of the compound. We have the hostile in custody, and we have some of the best bioweapons specialists in the world working the problem. But if the hostile was telling the truth about no known countermeasure, then you'll find an unknown one. Evelyn looked at her sharply. That's optimistic. That's what I saw you do tonight. Find solutions nobody else knew existed. Save a patient everyone else had given up for dead. Sarah met her eyes directly. You're not going to let him die. Not after everything you did to keep him alive this far. The confidence was touching and probably misplaced, but Evelyn didn't correct her. Hope was a resource too, especially in situations where rational analysis suggested failure. Captain Miller appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Colonel, we have a problem. Another one? Director Marsh is on secure video. She wants to speak with you immediately, and she does not sound happy. Evelyn followed Miller to the commandeered administrator's office, where the video screen showed Director Marsh's face arranged in lines of professional fury. Colonel Kane, explain to me how a hostile operative penetrated military security, accessed a secure wing using valid credentials, and administered a bioweapon to a high-value asset under your protection. Director, I wasn't assigned protective detail. I was present as medical personnel. You accepted recall to active consultation status. That made you responsible for the security situation whether you wanted it or not. Marsh's voice could have etched steel. This is exactly the kind of catastrophic failure I was concerned about. Your presence draws threats. Your cover exposure creates vulnerabilities. And now we have a dying general and a captured operative who seems pleased about the outcome. Evelyn felt the accusation like a physical blow. You're suggesting I'm somehow responsible for... I'm suggesting that coincidence has limits, Colonel. First, you're conveniently present when Caldwell is brought in after an attack. Then a hostile with detailed knowledge of hospital security and your specific capabilities launches a secondary strike. The pattern suggests either you're compromised or you're being deliberately used as a catalyst for enemy operations. That's insane, is it? Because from my perspective, every crisis point tonight has centered on you. You identified the first compound. You stopped the initial treatment error. You confronted the hostile. You disrupted his injection sequence. You're at the center of everything, which means either you're extraordinarily unlucky or you're part of the design. The logic was sound even if the conclusion was wrong. Evelyn could see how the pattern looked from Marcia's perspective. Too many interventions, too much specialized knowledge, too perfectly positioned to affect outcomes. Director, if I were working for hostile interests, General Caldwell would be dead already. I had multiple opportunities to facilitate that outcome. Instead, I've consistently acted to preserve his life at significant personal risk. Or you're playing a longer game. Establish credibility through short-term heroics, gain access to classified response protocols, then deliver strategic intelligence to hostile actors. Marsh leaned forward. I want you isolated and debriefed by counterintelligence immediately. Full polygraph, full background investigation, full security review. That will take days we don't have. Caldwell needs to be as far from you as possible until we determine your actual loyalties. As of now, you're relieved of all operational duties and confined to base pending investigation. The screen went dark before Evelyn could protest. She stared at the blank display, feeling the weight of strategic betrayal settling over her. She'd done everything right tactically, saved Caldwell, stopped the hostile, preserved evidence, and now was being punished for effectiveness. Captain Miller stood silent, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Finally, he spoke. Ma'am, I'll need to escort you to temporary detention. Director's orders. I understand, Captain. For what it's worth, I think she's wrong. I watched you work tonight. That wasn't someone facilitating an attack. That was someone fighting like hell to prevent one. Appreciated. But orders are orders. Miller led her from the office, through corridors now quiet in the aftermath of chaos. The hospital felt like a crime scene, marked by spent brass casings, scorched walls, and the lingering smell of gunfire. Staff were emerging from sheltering locations, voices hushed, faces showing the strain of trauma. They passed Dr. Marcus Brennan in the main corridor. He was still there, despite being released earlier, standing near the entrance and staring at the damage with an expression Evelyn couldn't quite read. When he saw her in custody, his face cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been vindication. So the hero falls, he said, loud enough to carry. Turns out you weren't so special after all. Evelyn stopped, met his eyes, and spoke with quiet precision. Doctor, I saved a man's life tonight using skills you'll never possess. I stopped a bioweapon attack using knowledge you'll never acquire. And I'm being detained because I'm too effective at my job, not because I failed at it. We are not the same. She continued walking before he could respond, leaving him standing in the wreckage of his own inadequacy. The temporary detention area was a conference room converted into makeshift holding, with Marines posted outside and surveillance equipment installed hastily but thoroughly. Miller looked genuinely apologetic as he showed her inside. Someone will bring you food and water. If you need medical attention for your leg, I'm fine, Captain, just following orders like everyone else. The door closed with a finality that echoed in the small space. Evelyn lowered herself into one of the conference chairs, her leg finally demanding acknowledgement of the abuse she'd put it through tonight. Pain radiated from knee to hip, familiar and grinding. She had maybe 6 hours before whatever compound was in Caldwell's system reached cascade activation, whatever that meant. She had evidence samples being analyzed at Fort Detrick, a captured hostile who wouldn't talk, and a counterintelligence director who thought she was a traitor. The odds were not favorable. Evelyn pulled out her phone, the special one, the encrypted device that connected her to resources beyond normal channels. She stared at it for a long moment, weighing the cost of what she was about to do. Then she typed a single message to a contact she'd hoped never to use again. Cascade protocol suspected. Need access to classified bioweapons database immediately. Will explain when secure. The response came in less than 30 seconds. Database access granted. But Kane, this burns your last bridge. After this, there's no walking away. You're back in whether you want to be or not. Evelyn stared at the message, understanding exactly what it meant. Using classified access while under counterintelligence investigation would confirm every suspicion Marsh had. It would end any possibility of returning to civilian life, would mark her permanently as either intelligence asset or security threat. But General Caldwell was dying from a compound only she might be able to identify. And doing nothing meant letting operational politics override mission necessity. She'd made harder choices before. Understood, she typed back. Send access credentials. As she waited for the database connection to establish, Evelyn Kane, lieutenant colonel, combat medical officer, and nurse who just wanted to be invisible, accepted that invisibility was no longer an option. The war had found her again, and this time she was going to finish it. The database loaded with agonizing slowness, each percentage point of progress measured against seconds that General Caldwell didn't have. Evelyn's phone screen glowed in the dim conference room, showing classified bioweapons research that could earn her a treason charge just for accessing while under investigation. She didn't care. The interface was familiar despite years away. Military databases never changed their fundamental architecture, just added layers of encryption. She navigated through weapons classifications, biochemical agents, experimental compounds that existed only in theoretical form or locked vaults deep underground. The search parameters were specific: amber coloration, intravenous delivery, cascade activation mechanism, 6-hour timeline. The database churned through thousands of entries, cross-referencing characteristics against known agents. 3 matches appeared. Evelyn's breath caught as she read the first entry. Project Ouroboros, developed 2018, classified above top secret. A binary compound designed to remain dormant in the bloodstream until triggered by specific metabolic conditions. Once activated, it created a cascading cellular failure that mimicked natural organ shutdown, undetectable in standard autopsy, leaving no forensic evidence of assassination. The second match was worse. Project Medusa, theoretical development from 2020, never successfully synthesized. It targeted neural pathways specifically, causing progressive paralysis followed by respiratory failure. The timeline matched, 6 hours from administration to complete system failure. The third entry made her blood run cold. Project Thanatos, developed 2022 by a joint task force including Defense Intelligence Agency personnel, a compound designed to be undetectable and unstoppable with one critical feature: it required a 2-stage activation. First stage was the amber injection. Second stage was environmental trigger that could be anything from temperature change to specific chemical exposure, which meant the hostile's surrender made perfect sense. He didn't need to escape because the real weapon wasn't just the compound. It was whatever second stage trigger was already in place, waiting for Caldwell to be exposed to it. And Fort Detrick, with its advanced biocontainment facilities and biochemical research equipment, would be full of potential environmental triggers. Evelyn was typing a message to General Thorpe when the conference room door opened. Not Captain Miller this time, but Director Marsh herself, flanked by 2 federal agents with expressions suggesting they expected resistance. "Step away from the phone, Colonel." Evelyn looked up, her face carefully neutral. "Director, I've identified the compound. It's Project Thanatos, a 2-stage bioweapon that requires—" "I said step away from the phone. You're accessing classified databases while under investigation. That's a federal crime." General Caldwell is being transported to a facility where the second stage trigger likely exists. If he's exposed, he dies. The hostile's surrender was tactical. He's counting on us to do exactly what we're doing. Evelyn stood, her leg protesting but holding. "You want to arrest me? Fine. But let me send this intelligence to Fort Detrick first." Marsh crossed the room in 3 strides and took the phone from Evelyn's hand with swift authority. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting from anger to something more complex as she read the database entry. Project Thanatos was shut down 2 years ago. All samples were destroyed. Apparently not all of them. Marsh was silent for a long moment, her eyes scanning the classified information. When she looked up, calculation had replaced fury. "If you're right, this changes everything. But it also raises the question of how you knew to look for a 2-stage compound. Because the hostile was too calm, too confident. He accomplished half an injection and surrendered like it didn't matter. That behavior only makes sense if half-dose was sufficient or if completion would happen through other means. That's tactical analysis, not bioweapons expertise. I developed counter-protocols for Thanatos when it was in testing phase. I was read into the project because DIA wanted medical officers trained to recognize and respond to experimental compounds. Evelyn met Marsh's eyes directly. That's in my service record, Director. Classified sections you clearly didn't review before accusing me of treason. The accusation hung in the air between them. One of the federal agents shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the implication. Marsh had ordered detention without complete background verification. Marsh's jaw tightened, but she handed the phone back to Evelyn. Send your intelligence to Fort Detrick. Then you and I are going to have a very long conversation about operational protocols and chain of command. Evelyn sent the message with trembling fingers, watching the encryption confirmation appear before the data transmitted. Done. Whatever happened to her now, at least Caldwell had a chance. The response from Fort Detrick came in less than a minute. Intel received. Halting transport approach, establishing remote containment protocols, standby for further instructions. They're stopping the helicopter, Evelyn reported, keeping Caldwell in isolated environment until they can verify trigger mechanisms. Marsh nodded slowly, then turned to the federal agents. Leave us, close the door. The agents departed, clearly unhappy about leaving their director alone with a suspect, but not willing to disobey direct orders. The door clicked shut, leaving Evelyn and Marsh in tense isolation. I owe you an apology, Marsh said, the words clearly costing her significant effort. I jumped to conclusions based on pattern recognition and security paranoia. The coincidences surrounding your presence tonight looked like enemy action rather than operational fortune. Apology noted. But don't mistake my apology for trust, Colonel. You're still the common factor in every crisis point, and now you've demonstrated access to classified systems and knowledge of experimental bioweapons programs. That makes you either an asset or a liability, and I haven't decided which yet. Evelyn leaned against the conference table, taking weight off her injured leg. What would convince you I'm an asset? Help me understand the bigger picture. Someone had access to Thanatos samples that were supposed to be destroyed. Someone knew General Caldwell's schedule and planned a sophisticated assassination. Someone knew you were at this hospital and potentially factored that into their operational design. Marsh pulled out a tablet, calling up files. These aren't random variables. This is coordinated intelligence operation with resources suggesting state actor or well-funded organization. Agreed. And the hostile's willingness to surrender suggests he's either expendable or expects rescue. Evelyn thought through the tactical implications. Have you interrogated him yet? Preliminary questioning. He's given nothing useful. No name, no organization, no operational details. Professional resistance training, probably military background. Marsh swiped through images on her tablet. But his biometrics are interesting. Facial recognition pulled a partial match to a former Army Ranger named Thomas Garrett, dishonorably discharged 3 years ago for conduct violations. What kind of violations? Classified. His service record is heavily redacted, but the discharge was connected to an operation in Syria that went badly wrong. Marsh turned the tablet so Evelyn could see. 6 soldiers died. Garrett was the only survivor. He claimed the mission was compromised by intelligence failure, that someone in the command structure fed bad information that got his team killed. Evelyn studied the image. Same face as the hostile younger, wearing Army dress uniform with Ranger tab visible. He blamed intelligence officers for his team's death. Specifically, he blamed Defense Intelligence Agency personnel, made threats during his discharge hearing, promised he'd expose the truth about intelligence community corruption. Marsh pulled the tablet back, which makes tonight's attack look less like foreign operation and more like revenge. The pieces were falling into position with ugly clarity. General Caldwell worked DIA operations in Syria during the relevant time frame. You think Garrett blames him for the mission failure? I think Garrett has spent 3 years planning revenge against the people he holds responsible for his team's death, and he's found resources willing to fund that revenge in exchange for demonstrating new bioweapons capability. Who would fund something like that? That's the question that keeps me up at night, Colonel, because Thanatos-level compounds don't exist outside highly classified government programs, which means either there's a leak in our bioweapons research or someone inside our own programs is enabling this operation. The implication was staggering. Internal threat, not external. Someone with access to America's most dangerous classified weapons helping a discharged soldier conduct revenge attacks. You need to interrogate Garrett properly, Evelyn said. Enhance techniques if necessary. He's the only lead we have to whoever's backing him. Already authorized, but experienced interrogators estimate we're looking at minimum 48 hours to break professional resistance, and we don't have that time if Caldwell's condition deteriorates. Evelyn's phone buzzed with an incoming message from Fort Detrick. Analysis confirms Thanatos variant, second stage trigger identified as specific electromagnetic frequency. Maintaining EM isolation around patient, requesting immediate consultation with Project Thanatos development team. They need the original research team, Evelyn said, showing Marsh the message. People who understand the compound's design and can develop counter protocols. Most of that team has scattered to private sector or retired. Reassembling them will take days. I was on the medical oversight committee. I reviewed the compound's biological mechanisms and helped design trauma response protocols. Evelyn met Marsh's eyes. I can consult remotely if you'll authorize the connection. Marsh studied her face, calculation visible in every line. This was the moment. Either she trusted Evelyn's expertise or continued treating her as security risk. One condition, Marsh said finally. You work under direct supervision. Everything you access, everything you communicate gets monitored and recorded. Any indication of compromise and you're isolated immediately. Agreed. Marsh made a call, her voice clipped and authoritative as she arranged secure video connection to Fort Detrick. Within minutes, Evelyn was staring at a screen showing the Biocontainment Facility's command center where military medical personnel surrounded General Caldwell's isolation pod. Colonel Kane? The voice belonged to Major Davidson, the USAMRIID team leader who'd supervised the transport. We need your expertise. The compound is more sophisticated than original Thanatos design. It's mutated or been deliberately modified. Evelyn leaned forward, studying the medical readouts visible on the screen. Caldwell's vitals were stable, but showed subtle degradation patterns consistent with early-stage cascade activation. Describe the modifications. Original Thanatos required external EM trigger at specific frequency. This variant appears to have internalized the trigger mechanism. We're detecting anomalous electromagnetic signatures originating from the compound itself, suggesting it might be self-activating on a timer rather than external stimulus. Which meant isolation wouldn't save Caldwell. The weapon was already inside him, counting down to detonation regardless of environmental controls. How long until full cascade? Evelyn asked. Based on current degradation rate, approximately 4 hours. Maybe less. 4 hours to develop a counter protocol for a weapon designed to be unstoppable. 4 hours to save a man whose death would demonstrate catastrophic vulnerability in America's intelligence leadership. I need full access to the compound analysis, Evelyn said. Molecular structure, cellular interaction mechanisms, cascade pathway mapping, everything. Data began flooding her screen, complex biochemical formulas, cellular models, progression timelines. Evelyn absorbed it with the focused intensity of someone who'd spent years studying exactly these kinds of threats. The modifications were elegant and terrifying. Someone had taken the already deadly Thanatos and made it autonomous, eliminating the need for external triggers. The compound used the body's own electromagnetic field as activation energy, turning the victim's biology into the weapon's power source. This is beautiful, Evelyn murmured, professional admiration overriding moral horror. Whoever modified this understood cellular biophysics at an extraordinary level. Beautiful? Marsh's voice carried sharp disapproval. This is an assassination weapon. Which makes it no less sophisticated. Understanding the artistry helps me find the weakness. Evelyn's fingers moved across the tablet screen, manipulating the molecular models. Every weapon has a vulnerability. Thanatos was designed with a safety mechanism, a chemical failsafe that would neutralize the cascade if introduced early enough in the activation sequence. We tried standard Thanatos countermeasures. They didn't work. Because the modifications changed the cascade pathway, but the underlying chemistry should still respond to the same principles. Evelyn pulled up comparison models, overlaying original Thanatos structure with the modified variant. There. See that bonding site? It's unchanged despite the modifications. If we can introduce a compound that disrupts that specific bond, we might be able to halt the cascade. Major Davidson's face showed cautious hope. What compound? Something that doesn't exist yet. We'll have to synthesize it. Evelyn was already calculating molecular weights, reaction rates, synthesis pathways. I need access to your pharmaceutical lab and a team of biochemists who can follow complex instructions without asking questions. Colonel, synthesizing an untested compound and administering it to a dying patient is incredibly risky, Davidson objected. We could accelerate his death instead of preventing it. We could, but doing nothing guarantees his death within 4 hours. This gives him a chance, however small. Evelyn looked directly at the camera, addressing both Davidson and Marsh. I'm not going to lie and say this will work. I'm saying it's the only option that might work. Your call. Marsh spoke before Davidson could respond. Do it. Colonel Kane, you have full authorization to direct the synthesis and administration. Major Davidson, give her whatever resources she needs. The screen split, showing both the biocontainment facility and a pharmaceutical laboratory where white-coated technicians were already assembling equipment. Evelyn began issuing instructions with the rapid precision of someone who'd commanded emergency medical teams in combat. I need a base solution of dimethyl sulfoxide, pharmaceutical grade, 500 milliliters. Add sodium hydroxide to adjust pH to exactly 7.8. Then we're going to synthesize a custom chelating agent. The next 90 minutes blurred into focused intensity. Evelyn directed the synthesis remotely, watching through lab cameras as technicians combined compounds in sequences that existed nowhere in standard pharmacology. She was essentially inventing a new drug in real time, based on theoretical chemistry and desperate necessity. Director Marsh watched silently, her presence a constant reminder that Evelyn's career and possibly freedom depended on success. But Evelyn couldn't afford to think about consequences. Only the chemistry mattered, only the reactions, only the possibility of disrupting molecular bonds before they destroyed General Caldwell's cellular structure. Final compound is stable, one of the technicians reported. Clear solution, pH balanced, no precipitation. Ready for administration if you authorize it. Evelyn stared at the screen showing the synthesized counteragent. It looked like simple saline solution, completely unremarkable, but it represented either salvation or catastrophic failure. What's Caldwell's current status? She asked. Major Davidson checked the medical monitors. Vital signs declining. Cascade activation is accelerating. We're maybe 90 minutes from complete system failure. 90 minutes. And they were about to inject him with an untested compound that might kill him faster. Colonel Kane, Marsh said quietly, are you certain about this? No, but I'm certain that doing nothing means he dies. This gives him a chance. Then make the call. Evelyn took a breath, then spoke with command voice that left no room for doubt. Administer the counteragent. Start with 50 milliliters slow IV push, monitor for adverse reactions, then begin continuous infusion at 100 milliliters per hour. The biocontainment team moved with practiced efficiency, connecting the synthesized compound to Caldwell's IV line. Evelyn watched the clear liquid flow through transparent tubing into the general's bloodstream, carrying hope or poison with equal probability. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The monitors continued their steady degradation, vitals declining, cascade progressing. Then the numbers stabilized. Not dramatically, no miraculous reversal, no sudden recovery. Just a gentle plateauing of the decline, the cascade slowing, cellular destruction losing momentum. It's working, Davidson breathed. Degradation rate is decreasing. The cascade is being disrupted. Evelyn didn't allow herself relief yet. Stabilization wasn't recovery. The counteragent needed to fully neutralize the Thanatos variant, not just slow it down. Increase infusion rate to 150 milliliters per hour. We need to saturate his system before the cascade can adapt. The next hour was agonizing. The monitors showed improvement so gradual it was almost imperceptible. Vital signs creeping back toward normal ranges, cellular markers indicating reduced stress, cascade activation decelerating toward complete halt. And then General Caldwell's eyes opened. Where? His voice was weak, confused. What happened? Sir, you're in biocontainment at Fort Detrick, Major Davidson said, moving into the general's field of view. You were exposed to a bioweapon, but you're going to be fine now. Caldwell's gaze sharpened despite his physical weakness. Who stopped it? Who developed the counter protocol? Davidson glanced at the camera. Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn Kane, sir, working remotely from Seattle. Kane. Caldwell's face showed recognition. Angel 6. I should have known. Tell her. He coughed, his body still recovering. Tell her the intelligence community owes her. Again. Evelyn felt something unknot in her chest. Relief, validation, the simple satisfaction of mission success. She'd saved him. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but definitively. Director Marsh was watching her with an expression that had shifted completely from suspicion to assessment. Impressive work, Colonel. Just doing what needed doing, Director. That seems to be your specialty, which is why I'm rescinding your detention order and reinstating your operational status effective immediately. Marsh's voice carried formal authority now. You've demonstrated both capability and loyalty under extreme pressure. Whatever my earlier suspicions, they were clearly unfounded. Evelyn nodded, accepting the apology that wasn't quite spoken. What about Thomas Garrett, the hostile who administered the compound? Still in custody? Still resisting interrogation? But with Caldwell alive and recovering, Garrett's mission has failed completely. That changes the psychological dynamic. Experienced interrogators believe he'll break within the next 12 hours now that his primary objective is definitively lost. And whoever provided him with the modified Thanatos? Marsh's expression hardened. That's a longer investigation. But we have leads now. Garrett's financial records, communication patterns, travel history. Someone funded his operation, provided him with classified bioweapons, and coordinated intelligence support. We'll find them. The secure video connection to Fort Detrick remained active, showing General Caldwell now resting comfortably, his vitals stable, the threat neutralized. Major Davidson was coordinating with his medical team, ensuring continuous monitoring and beginning the process of comprehensive decontamination. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a new message, this one from General Thorpe. Outstanding work, Colonel. When you're finished in Seattle, we need to discuss your permanent return to active duty. The intelligence community needs officers with your capabilities. She stared at the message, understanding what it meant. Her 8 months of quiet civilian life were over. She'd demonstrated skills too valuable to waste on night shifts and routine trauma cases. The military had reclaimed her whether she wanted to be reclaimed or not. Captain Miller appeared in the doorway of the conference room, his expression showing relief. Colonel Kane, I've been ordered to escort you to hospital administration. Apparently there's a situation developing with Dr. Brennan. Evelyn stood, her leg reminding her of the night's abuse, but no longer threatening to collapse. What kind of situation? The kind where hospital lawyers are involved, and people are using words like gross negligence and medical license review. Miller's slight smile suggested he wasn't entirely displeased by this development. I think you'll want to see this. The walk to hospital administration took them through corridors now being cleaned by janitorial staff, evidence of the night's violence gradually disappearing. But the emotional aftermath remained visible in the faces of nurses and doctors who'd witnessed military invasion of their civilian workspace. The administrator's office was crowded with people, hospital executives, legal counsel, federal agents conducting their investigation, and Dr. Marcus Brennan sitting in a chair looking like a man watching his world collapse in real time. The hospital CEO, a woman named Dr. Patricia Huang, looked up as Evelyn entered. Lieutenant Colonel Kane, we've been reviewing security footage and incident reports from tonight's events. We need your statement regarding Dr. Brennan's actions during the initial patient crisis. My statement is in the federal report, Evelyn said carefully, aware that her words could destroy what remained of Brennan's career. We need it for our internal investigation. Specifically, we need to know if Dr. Brennan ignored medical warnings that subsequently proved accurate. Evelyn met Brennan's eyes across the room. He looked diminished now, the arrogance burned away by consequences, leaving only the scared reality of someone who'd made catastrophic mistakes. She could lie, could soften the truth, give him a chance to recover his reputation, if not his position at this hospital. It would be the kind thing, the merciful thing. But mercy wasn't always justice. Doctor, Brennan was warned twice that the material in General Caldwell's wounds was dangerous and required specialized handling, Evelyn said, her voice clear and professional. Once by Nurse Sarah Chen, who correctly identified anomalous characteristics. Once by me, who specifically identified the material as a binary toxin delivery system. Dr. Brennan dismissed both warnings based on his assessment of our credentials rather than the validity of our observations. He then proceeded with high-heat cauterization that activated the compound and nearly killed the patient. "That's not," Brennan started, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm, silencing him. Dr. Huang made notes on her tablet. "And after the compound activated, who stabilized the patient?" "I did. Using protocols Dr. Brennan couldn't have known because they're classified. But the cascade activation could have been prevented entirely if he'd listened to either warning instead of assuming his expertise was unquestionable." "But this is character assassination," Brennan's lawyer objected. "My client followed standard trauma protocols based on the information available to him." "The information was available," Evelyn corrected. "He chose not to process it because it came from sources he'd already decided were inferior. That's not protocol failure. That's ego failure." Dr. Huang nodded slowly. "We've also reviewed Dr. Brennan's earlier interaction with you, Colonel. The public humiliation, the dismissal from trauma duties, the comments about your injury. How would you characterize that behavior?" Evelyn considered her answer carefully. "Unprofessional, discriminatory, based on assumptions about physical capability rather than actual performance. Did it affect your ability to function during the crisis? No. But it might have affected the outcome if I'd chosen to honor his directive and stayed away from the trauma bay entirely. General Caldwell would likely be dead." The room absorbed that statement in heavy silence. Brennan's face had gone pale, the full weight of his mistakes now undeniable and documented. "Dr. Brennan," Dr. Huang said formally, "as of this moment, you are suspended from all clinical duties pending completion of our internal investigation and review by the medical board. Your access to hospital facilities is revoked except for purposes of this investigation. You will surrender your credentials and hospital identification immediately." Brennan stood unsteadily, his hands shaking as he removed his ID badge. The brilliant trauma surgeon who'd arrived 6 weeks ago with such confidence was gone, replaced by someone who'd discovered that expertise without judgment was just sophisticated ignorance. "This isn't fair," he said quietly. "I'm a good doctor. I save lives." "You are a skilled surgeon," Evelyn agreed, "but skill without humility is dangerous. Tonight you learned that lesson in the worst possible way. Someone almost died because you assumed you knew better than everyone in the room. And you're perfect? You never make mistakes." "I make mistakes constantly. The difference is I listen when people tell me I'm wrong. I adjust. I learn." Evelyn's voice softened slightly. "You could have been a great trauma chief, Dr. Brennan, but you chose ego over collaboration, and that choice has consequences." Hospital security escorted Brennan from the office, his departure marked by the same public visibility as his earlier condemnation of Evelyn. The symmetry was almost poetic. The man who'd humiliated her now experiencing professional destruction in front of the same audience. But Evelyn felt no satisfaction in his downfall. Just tired recognition that some lessons could only be learned through failure. Dr. Huang turned to Evelyn with an expression mixing embarrassment and respect. "Colonel Kane, on behalf of Cascade Medical Center, I want to apologize for how you were treated tonight, Doctor. Brennan's behavior was inexcusable, and our failure to recognize your capabilities created a dangerous situation." "Apology accepted, Dr. Huang, but I'm not interested in retribution. I just want to return to my work." "About that," Dr. Huang exchanged glances with her legal counsel. "Given tonight's events and your demonstrated expertise, we'd like to offer you a position as senior trauma consultant, increased pay, better hours, authority to override attending physicians when you identify critical threats." It was generous. More than generous, the kind of offer that recognized her value and made amends for Brennan's discrimination. And Evelyn was going to have to refuse it. "I appreciate the offer, Dr. Huang, but I suspect my military obligations are about to become significantly more demanding. I may not be able to maintain civilian employment." Then we'll keep the position open for when those obligations allow. Dr. Huang extended her hand. You're always welcome here, Colonel. Always. Evelyn shook her hand, feeling the weight of bridges rebuilt and professional respect restored. Then Captain Miller was guiding her back toward the commandeered conference room where Director Marsh waited with new developments. Garrett broke, Marsh announced as soon as Evelyn entered. Complete confession. Names, operations, funding sources, everything. That was fast. General Caldwell's survival destroyed his psychological foundation. Garrett had convinced himself he was serving justice, avenging his dead team by eliminating corrupt intelligence officers. When his primary target survived and his sophisticated attack failed completely, his entire worldview collapsed. Marsh pulled up files on her tablet. He's been working with a private military contractor called Aegis Solutions. They provided the modified Thanatos, the tactical support, and the funding in exchange for field testing new bioweapons capabilities. Aegis Solutions. Evelyn recognized the name, a corporation that operated in the gray space between legitimate security services and criminal mercenary work. They're using revenge-motivated assets to test weapons they plan to sell to hostile nations. Exactly. And Garrett wasn't their only operative. They have at least 6 other discharged soldiers running similar operations against various targets. This was a proof of concept for weaponizing disgruntled military personnel. The implications were staggering. Not just one attack, but a systematic campaign using America's own discharged soldiers as weapons against their former command structure. Where's Aegis Solutions headquartered? That's the interesting part. Their corporate registration is Cayman Islands, but their operational base is, Marsh paused significantly, here, Seattle, specifically in an industrial complex about 8 miles from this hospital. The coincidences that had troubled Marsh earlier suddenly made new sense. Evelyn wasn't the target, she was bait. Aegis had known she was in Seattle, had tracked her for months, and had planned Caldwell's attack to occur close enough that she'd inevitably be involved. They wanted me to reveal myself, Evelyn realized, demonstrate my capabilities, prove that their modified bioweapons could challenge even classified counter-protocols. And when you succeeded in saving Caldwell, they got exactly what they wanted, proof that their weapons are sophisticated enough to require expert-level intervention. That makes them more valuable to potential buyers. Marsh's expression was grim. You weren't being targeted, Colonel. You were being marketed. The manipulation was elegant and infuriating. Aegis had turned her expertise into their selling point, her success into their advertisement. Every life she'd saved tonight had inadvertently demonstrated the lethality of the weapons she was countering. We need to shut them down, Evelyn said flatly. Tonight, before they can sanitize their operations or disappear into offshore corporations. Already coordinating with FBI and military assets, but there's a complication. Marsh hesitated, which was unusual enough to be concerning. Aegis Solutions has contracts with multiple federal agencies. They provide legitimate security services, employ hundreds of former military personnel, and have friends in very high places. Moving against them requires political approval we don't currently have. Then get it. Colonel, this isn't a tactical operation. This is bureaucratic warfare. We need evidence, legal justification, interagency coordination. We have a confessed operative who admitted to bioweapons attack funded by Aegis Solutions. We have General Caldwell's testimony about the assassination attempt. We have physical evidence of modified Thanatos compound. Evelyn leaned forward, ignoring the protest from her leg. What more evidence do you need? Evidence that will survive court challenges and congressional oversight. Evidence that can't be dismissed as hearsay or circumstantial connection. Marsh's frustration was visible now. Trust me, I want to raid their facility tonight, but without proper authorization, any evidence we collect could be challenged, any arrests could be overturned, and Aegis walks free while we face charges for illegal search and seizure. Evelyn understood the legal reality, but patience had never been her strongest quality. How long to get proper authorization? Minimum 48 hours. More likely 72. In 72 hours, Aegis will know Garrett talked. They'll destroy evidence, relocate personnel, and establish plausible deniability for everything they've done. I know, But operating outside legal authority makes us no better than them. The argument was sound. Evelyn knew it intellectually, even as her tactical instincts screamed for immediate action. But Marsh was right. Justice without due process was just revenge. And revenge wouldn't protect future targets from Aegis's weaponized bioweapons. Captain Miller's radio crackled with urgent communication. His face went pale as he listened. Then he turned to Marsh. "Director, we have a situation. The federal agents transporting Thomas Garrett to secure detention just went silent. Last reported position was 2 miles from here, heading toward the industrial district, toward Aegis Solutions headquarters." "Extraction team," Evelyn said immediately. "Aegis is rescuing their asset before he can testify against them." Marsh was already on her phone, coordinating response. "All units, we have possible hostile extraction of federal prisoner. Last known position, Route 99 southbound. Consider subjects armed and extremely dangerous." But Evelyn knew they were already too late. Aegis had demonstrated sophisticated planning and insider intelligence. They'd known exactly when and where to intercept the prisoner transport, which meant they had access to federal communications or personnel, which meant someone inside the investigation was compromised. She caught Marsh's eye and saw the same realization dawning. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance. This was infiltration at a level that suggested Aegis had resources far beyond private military contracting. "We need to assume operational security is compromised," Evelyn said quietly. Garrett's extraction was too precise to be opportunistic. Someone fed them intelligence about his transport route and timing. Marsh's expression hardened with the terrible certainty of internal betrayal. "Lock down all communications. No one discusses ongoing operations over standard channels. Everything goes through encrypted back channels only." But even as she gave the orders, Evelyn could see the strategic trap closing. Aegis had maneuvered them into a position where every advantage had been neutralized. Their prisoner was gone, their evidence potentially tainted, their communications compromised, and their legal authority constrained by bureaucratic requirements. Evelyn's phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. "You played beautifully tonight, Angel 6. Every move exactly as predicted. Caldwell lives, Garrett breaks, and now everyone knows what we're capable of. Thank you for the demonstration. Our clients are very impressed." She showed the message to Marsh, watching the director's face cycle through shock and fury. "They're mocking us," Marsh said, voice tight with controlled rage, "rubbing our faces in how completely they've manipulated this situation." "No," Evelyn corrected, reading the message again with tactical eyes. "They're revealing themselves. This isn't mockery. This is arrogance, and arrogance creates vulnerabilities." The message had come from an untraceable number, routed through multiple international servers. But the psychological profile it revealed was valuable intelligence. Whoever ran Aegis Solutions couldn't resist demonstrating their cleverness, couldn't let their successful manipulation go unacknowledged. That need for recognition was a weakness Evelyn could exploit. She began typing a response, her fingers moving with cold precision. Impressive operation. "But you made one critical mistake. You assumed saving Caldwell was my primary objective. It wasn't. Analyzing your modified Thanatos was. Now I understand your capabilities, your methodology, and your psychological profile. See you soon." The response came within seconds. "We'll be waiting, Colonel Kane. Bring whoever you want. Our facility is quite secure." It was invitation and challenge combined. Aegis Solutions offering open confrontation because they believed themselves untouchable. Evelyn looked at Director Marsh, at Captain Miller, at the federal agents coordinating response throughout the hospital. She thought about General Caldwell recovering in biocontainment, about the other potential targets Aegis might be planning to attack, about the discharged soldiers being weaponized against their former command structure, and she made a decision that would either end her career or define it. "Director Marsh, I'm requesting immediate tactical authorization to infiltrate Aegis Solutions headquarters." "Absolutely not. We need legal warrants, proper authority." "They just extracted a federal prisoner and openly challenged us to respond. That's probable cause for immediate action under national security provisions. It's a legal gray area at best." "Then make it black and white. Use your authority as counterintelligence director to declare Aegis an immediate national security threat. That gives us operational latitude to act before they sanitize their evidence." Marsh stared at her, calculation visible in every line of her face. This was the moment where bureaucratic caution fought tactical necessity, where legal constraints confronted operational reality. If this goes wrong, both our careers are over, Marsh said finally. If we don't act, more people die while we wait for paperwork to clear. The silence stretched for 5 heartbeats. Then Marsh nodded once, sharp and decisive. Do it. But Colonel, if you're wrong about this, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your career analyzing supply requisitions at some frozen outpost in Alaska. Understood, Director. Evelyn turned to Captain Miller. Captain, I need a tactical team, full tactical gear, and transport to Aegis Solutions headquarters within 30 minutes. Can you make that happen? Miller grinned, the expression of someone who'd been waiting all night for this order. Ma'am, I can make it happen in 20. As Miller moved to coordinate the assault team, Evelyn felt the familiar weight of operational command settling over her shoulders. This was what she'd walked away from 8 months ago. The violence, the risk, the terrible necessity of forcing confrontation to prevent greater harm. But walking away hadn't made the threats disappear. It had just meant someone else had to face them. And tonight, Evelyn Kane was done letting other people fight battles she was uniquely qualified to win. Her phone buzzed one final time with a message from the Aegis contact. 23 minutes. Your tactical coordination is showing. See you soon, Angel 6. We've prepared something special. Evelyn deleted the message and checked her weapon. A sidearm provided by Captain Miller, loaded and ready. The war had found her. And this time she was bringing overwhelming force. The tactical van screamed through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, with Captain Miller driving like he'd done urban assault insertions before, which, based on his service record, he absolutely had. Evelyn sat in the back with 8 Marines in full combat gear, their faces painted in the particular concentration that preceded violence. She'd changed into tactical clothing provided by the Marine quartermaster, black fatigues, body armor, communications headset. The uniform felt both foreign and familiar after 8 months of civilian scrubs, like putting on a skin she'd thought she'd shed, but that had simply been waiting underneath. Target is Industrial Complex Zoning Sector 7, Miller reported, one hand on the wheel, the other adjusting the tactical display mounted on the dashboard. Aegis Solutions occupies the entire western building, approximately 40,000 square feet. Security is extensive, private guards, surveillance systems, reinforced access points. Employee count? Evelyn asked, checking the sidearm Miller had provided. Standard issue Sig Sauer, familiar weight, deadly purpose. Unknown. Garrett claimed operational staff of maybe 30, but corporate records list over 200 employees. Most are likely legitimate security contractors unaware of the bioweapons program, which meant distinguishing targets from innocent personnel in high-stress tactical environment. Evelyn had done it before in combat zones, but never against American citizens on American soil. The rules of engagement were different here, the consequences of mistakes catastrophically higher. Director Marsh's voice crackled through the headset. All units, this is command. You have green light for tactical entry under national security provisions. Rules of engagement are weapons tight, return fire only, minimize casualties, secure evidence and personnel for federal prosecution. This is not a military strike. This is law enforcement with tactical support. Understood, Command, Miller acknowledged. ETA to target 3 minutes. Evelyn pulled up building schematics on her tablet, studying the layout with tactical eyes. The Aegis facility was designed like a fortress, single primary entrance, minimal windows, reinforced construction. Classic defensive architecture meant to repel exactly the kind of assault they were about to conduct. They know we're coming, she said to Miller. That message was invitation. They've had 20 minutes to prepare. Then we don't give them what they're expecting. Standard assault would hit the main entrance with overwhelming force. Instead, we split into 3 teams. One creates diversion at main entrance, one breaches through the loading dock, one enters through the roof access. Miller's tactical planning was solid, textbook small unit operations. You're with roof team, Colonel. We get you inside quiet. You locate and secure evidence while the other teams draw security response. It was good strategy. It was also putting Evelyn in the position of maximum operational risk with minimum support, exactly where she'd volunteered to be when she requested this mission. Works for me, Captain. The van slowed as they approached the industrial complex, pulling into a staging position 3 blocks from the target. 2 more vehicles arrived simultaneously: FBI Tactical Response Team and additional Marine support. 27 operators total against an unknown number of Aegis personnel in hardened facility. The odds weren't great, but Evelyn had faced worse. Special Agent Victoria Chen, FBI Tactical Commander, approached with the efficient intensity of someone who'd spent a career preparing for exactly these scenarios. Colonel Kane, Director Marsh briefed me on the situation. My team will coordinate with the Marines on simultaneous breach. You're our subject matter expert on bioweapons. Anything you need from us, you call it. I need time to locate their research facility. Wherever they're storing the modified Thanatos samples, that's priority 1. Everything else is secondary. Understood. We breach in 5 minutes. Good hunting. The roof team assembled. Evelyn, Captain Miller, and 4 Marines trained in vertical insertion operations. They moved through the rain toward a neighboring building with roof access that would allow them to reach Aegis headquarters without ground-level detection. The climb was brutal on Evelyn's injured leg. 3 flights of external fire escape, metal slick with rain, her cane abandoned in the tactical van because you couldn't fast rope with a walking stick. Each step sent sharp protests up her spine, but she pushed through with the grim determination of someone who'd learned that pain was just information, and information could be ignored when mission demanded it. They reached the roof of the neighboring building, and Miller's team began setting up the rope system that would allow them to traverse the gap to Aegis headquarters. Below, Evelyn could see the other assault teams moving into position, shadows in the rain, weapons ready. 2 minutes, Miller announced quietly. Colonel, you're sure about this? We can adjust the plan, put you with ground team. I'm sure, let's move. The rope traverse was worse than the stairs. Evelyn clipped into the safety line and pulled herself hand over hand across the gap between buildings, her leg dangling uselessly, upper body strength compensating for lower body weakness. The rain made the rope slippery, and the wind turned the crossing into a pendulum swing that tested her grip and her nerve. But she made it. All of them made it. 6 operators on the roof of Aegis Solutions headquarters with 1 minute until coordinated breach. Miller cut through this roof access lock with bolt cutters designed for exactly this purpose. The door opened on darkness and the smell of climate-controlled air. They were in. The assault began with synchronized precision. Below, flashbang grenades detonated at the main entrance, the distinctive crack boom rattling through the building's structure. Evelyn heard shouting, gunfire, the chaos of diversionary assault drawing security response exactly as planned. Her team moved through the darkness using night vision, clearing corridors with the practiced efficiency of operators who'd done building clearance countless times. They encountered no resistance on the upper floors. All security had responded to the main entrance assault, leaving the administrative levels undefended. Evidence would be in secured research area, Evelyn whispered, probably basement level. Maximum isolation from normal operations. They descended through stairwells, moving quickly but carefully, weapons raised and scanning for threats. The building's layout matched the schematics: offices on upper floors, operational spaces on ground level, and a heavily reinforced door marked authorized personnel only, leading to the basement. Miller tried the access panel. Red light, denied entry. Locked down. We need codes, or we breach. Breach takes time. Time draws response. Evelyn studied the panel, recognizing the security system from her intelligence background. I can bypass this if you give me 90 seconds. You have 60. Main assault team is getting heavy resistance. We need to move fast. Evelyn pulled a compact electronic warfare device from her tactical vest, equipment she'd requisitioned from military intelligence assets, ostensibly for training purposes, but really because she'd never quite trusted civilian life to remain permanently peaceful. The device interfaced with the access panel, running code-breaking algorithms at speeds that would have seemed like magic to anyone who didn't understand signals intelligence. 45 seconds. Red light persistent. 30 seconds. The algorithm found the first security layer and began penetration. 15 seconds. Gunfire from below. Someone had detected their presence. The light turned green. We're in, Evelyn said, yanking the door open. Move. The basement corridor was exactly what she'd expected. Sterile white walls, LED lighting, air filtration systems humming, the kind of environment designed for sensitive research. Doors lined both sides, each marked with cryptic alphanumeric codes rather than descriptive labels. "Split up," Miller ordered. "Two-person teams clear and catalog each room. Anything that looks like bioweapons research, you call it immediately." Evelyn partnered with Miller, taking the right corridor while the Marines cleared the left. The first three rooms were disappointing: computer servers, file storage, administrative offices for classified programs. But the fourth door opened on a laboratory that made Evelyn's blood run cold. It was a complete bioweapons research facility. Containment hoods, centrifuges, freezers marked with biohazard symbols, and racks of amber vials that she recognized immediately as Thanatos variants. "Command, this is Roof Team," Miller reported. "We have confirmed bioweapons laboratory, multiple samples of controlled substances, research documentation, synthesis equipment, jackpot." But Evelyn was focused on something else, a computer terminal displaying an active video feed. She moved closer, recognizing the face on the screen. Thomas Garrett, the captured hostile who'd been extracted from federal custody, sat in what looked like a debriefing room. But he wasn't being interrogated. He was receiving medical treatment for minor injuries, being handed a drink, being congratulated by someone off camera. They didn't extract him to escape prosecution, Evelyn realized. They extracted him to debrief, to download everything he learned during his attack and capture. Every security protocol we used, every response pattern, every tactical weakness. Miller's face went pale. They're building an intelligence database, using their operatives as field reconnaissance to map federal response capabilities. Which meant tonight's attack wasn't just about killing General Caldwell or testing bioweapons. It was an intelligence-gathering operation designed to identify exactly how American security forces responded to sophisticated threats. The computer terminal showed additional files, other operatives, other planned attacks, a systematic campaign to probe and map every aspect of federal counterterrorism infrastructure. "We need to secure this data," Evelyn said, pulling a portable storage device from her vest. "This is evidence of conspiracy far beyond single assassination attempt." She began downloading files, watching progress bars fill with information that could bring down an entire criminal organization. The data revealed financial networks connecting Aegis Solutions to offshore accounts in 12 countries. Personnel files showing former military and intelligence officers working for the company. Communication logs demonstrating coordination with foreign actors. And a client list that made her stop breathing. Aegis Solutions had sold bioweapons technology to entities in Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. They'd provided tactical training to terrorist organizations. They'd facilitated intelligence leaks that had compromised American operations and gotten agents killed. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance. This was systematic treason conducted under the cover of legitimate security contracting. "Colonel, we have company," Miller warned, his weapon trained on the laboratory entrance. "Multiple hostiles approaching, armed and organized." The download was only 60% complete. Evelyn needed more time, but time had just run out. "Cover the door. I'll finish the download." Gunfire erupted in the corridor. Controlled bursts from the Marines, answering fire from Aegis security personnel who'd finally realized the main entrance assault was diversion. Miller joined the firefight, his shots precise and devastating, dropping targets with professional efficiency. 70% complete. 80%. The laboratory door exploded inward as someone breached with explosive charge, smoke and debris filling the room. Evelyn dove behind a lab bench, protecting the computer terminal with her body, while Marines engaged multiple hostiles in close-quarters combat. 90% complete. A figure emerged through the smoke. Not Aegis security, but someone in civilian suit, unarmed, hands raised. Evelyn recognized him from intelligence briefings. Marcus Webb, CEO of Aegis Solutions, former CIA operations officer, and according to the downloaded files, architect of the entire criminal enterprise. "Colonel Kane," Webb said calmly, despite the gunfire rattling around him. "I wondered if you'd make it this far. Impressive tactical coordination. You're under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, illegal weapons development, and about 40 other federal charges," Evelyn replied, not lowering her weapon. "On the ground, hands behind your head." Webb smiled. "I don't think so. You see, This facility is equipped with fail-safes. If I don't transmit the correct security code within the next 30 seconds, the entire basement fills with aerosolized Thanatos variant. Everyone dies. Your Marines, my security team, and you. Mutually assured destruction. You're bluffing. Am I? Look at the ceiling vents. See those nozzles? They're connected to pressurized containers holding enough modified bioweapon to kill everyone in this building within 90 seconds of exposure. Webb checked his watch. 20 seconds now. I suggest you order your people to stand down. Evelyn's tactical calculation sharpened to brutal clarity. Webb was trapped, his operation exposed, his evidence being downloaded. The only card he had left was threatening mass casualty event, and based on everything she'd learned tonight, he absolutely had the ruthlessness to follow through. But she also knew something Webb didn't. Captain Miller, relay to all teams, full building evacuation. Immediate. Bioweapons threat is credible. Miller's eyes widened, but he didn't question the order. All units evacuate now. Fall back to safe perimeter. Webb's smile widened. Smart decision, Colonel. Now stop that download and step away from the terminal. Download complete, 100%. Evelyn ejected the storage device and pocketed it. Done. You've got your building. We've got our evidence. Tactical draw. Not quite. You see, that download included a rather sophisticated tracking virus. The moment you connect that storage device to any federal system, it will compromise the entire network and provide me with access to classified databases I've been trying to penetrate for years. Webb's confidence was absolute. So, really, you've done exactly what I wanted, again. For a moment, cold doubt gripped Evelyn's chest. Had she just compromised federal security to secure evidence? Had Webb's apparent defeat been another layer of manipulation? Then she smiled. Captain Miller, do you remember those cybersecurity protocols I had you implement before we breached? Yes, ma'am. Isolated network access, air-gapped systems, malware detection on all downloads. And the virus Webb just mentioned? Quarantined and neutralized approximately 3 seconds after download began. We have clean data, zero compromise. Webb's expression finally cracked, confidence fracturing into fury. That's not possible. Our cyber warfare division designed that virus to be undetectable. To civilian systems, maybe. Not to military intelligence countermeasures specifically designed to identify and neutralize sophisticated malware. Evelyn's voice carried quiet satisfaction. You assumed I'd make the same mistakes your other targets made. You were wrong. The building's fire alarm screamed to life as the Marines completed evacuation. Through the ceiling, Evelyn could hear the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors, federal reinforcements arriving, surrounding the building with overwhelming force. Webb reached into his jacket, and Evelyn's weapon tracked the movement, but he pulled out only a phone. One call releases the bioweapon. Everyone dies. I may be trapped, but I'm taking you with me. No, you're not. The voice came from the laboratory entrance, where Director Marsh stood flanked by FBI tactical operators in full hazmat gear. We've been pumping neutralizing agent through the building's ventilation system for the last 3 minutes. Your Thanatos containers are already inert. Your fail-safe just failed. Webb stared at her, the last of his control collapsing. How did you... Colonel Kane identified your probable countermeasure strategy before we even breached. She predicted you'd threaten bioweapons release because it's exactly what she would do in your position. Marcia's smile was cold and professional. The difference is, she planned for your plan. You didn't plan for hers. Federal agents swarmed the laboratory, securing Webb with flex cuffs while reading him his rights. He didn't resist, just stood there with the blank expression of someone whose entire strategic framework had been dismantled in real time. Marcus Webb, you are under arrest for treason against the United States, conspiracy to commit murder, illegal weapons development, and providing material support to terrorist organizations, Marsh announced formally. You have the right to remain silent. Evelyn tuned out the Miranda warning, her attention on the computer terminal where the complete evidence package was now being verified and backed up by FBI cyber forensics. Everything they needed to dismantle Aegis Solutions and prosecute everyone involved, financial records, operational plans, client lists, communication logs. Years of criminal enterprise ended in a single tactical operation. Miller appeared at her shoulder, his face showing the particular satisfaction of a mission completed successfully. "Building is secure, ma'am. No friendly casualties, 7 hostile wounded, 3 dead, 23 in custody. We're cataloging evidence now. And the other operatives, the discharged soldiers Aegis was weaponizing? FBI is coordinating with military police to locate and secure all identified assets. Based on Webb's files, we're looking at successful interdiction of at least 6 planned attacks." Miller paused. "You saved a lot of lives tonight, Colonel, more than just General Caldwell." Evelyn accepted the compliment with a tired nod, feeling the adrenaline beginning to fade and the pain in her leg demanding acknowledgement. She'd been operating on emergency reserves for hours, and her body was starting to present the bill. "Let's get out of here, Captain. I need to debrief command and then find somewhere quiet to collapse." The extraction was slower than the insertion. Marines securing evidence, FBI processing the crime scene, federal prosecutors already being briefed on the magnitude of the case they'd just inherited. Evelyn gave her statement to 3 different agencies, signed documentation establishing chain of custody, and authorized release of the downloaded data to appropriate oversight committees. By the time she stepped outside into Seattle's pre-dawn rain, the operation was 6 hours old, and the sun was beginning to threaten the eastern horizon with pale light. A familiar face waited near the tactical van. Sarah Chen, still in her nursing scrubs despite the hour, holding 2 cups of coffee like they were precious cargo. "I heard the operation was successful," Sarah said, offering 1 cup to Evelyn. "Thought you might need this." "How did you even know where to find me?" "Captain Miller sent word to the hospital. Said you'd probably appreciate friendly civilian presence after all the military intensity." Sarah's smile was tentative but genuine. "Also, I wanted to see the person who saved General Caldwell's life and dismantled a criminal conspiracy in one night. Make sure you were real and not some kind of superhero myth. Just a nurse with classified background and poor self-preservation instincts." That's not what everyone's saying. The hospital staff, the Marines, even Dr. Brennan before security escorted him out. Everyone's talking about Angel 6, the combat medic who came back to save the day. Evelyn sipped the coffee, feeling the warmth cut through exhaustion. "Angel 6 was a call sign from a different life. I'm just trying to figure out what comes next." "Do you have to go back? To the military, I mean?" It was the question Evelyn had been avoiding since General Thorpe's message about permanent return to active duty. The question with no easy answer, because both choices carried cost. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to disappear again, find another hospital, another quiet night shift where the biggest crisis is a cardiac arrest or a trauma bay overflow." Evelyn watched the sun creeping over Seattle's skyline, painting the rain-washed city in shades of gold and amber. "But another part of me knows that walking away means someone else has to handle threats I'm uniquely qualified to address. And I'm tired of letting other people fight my battles." That's a heavy burden to carry. It's the burden I chose when I accepted specialized training and classified responsibilities. Can't put it down just because it gets heavy. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then spoke with the careful consideration of someone who'd spent the night confronting her own assumptions about capability and courage. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you came back, even if it was just for one night. You showed all of us what real strength looks like, not the kind that comes from physical power or medical expertise, but the kind that comes from refusing to quit even when everyone's telling you you're not good enough." "Dr. Brennan told you that?" "Dr. Brennan told all of us that in 1,000 small ways over the last 6 weeks. Made us feel like we weren't smart enough, fast enough, good enough." Sarah's voice carried old hurt surfacing into daylight. "And then you came along and proved that competence doesn't require arrogance, that expertise can coexist with humility, that being injured doesn't mean being incapable. Sarah, you were the one who identified the wrong material in Caldwell's wound first. You trusted your instincts even when Brennan dismissed them. That's the real lesson from tonight, not that I saved the day, but that you already had the capability to save it yourself. You just needed someone to listen." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears that might have been exhaustion or emotion or both. "Thank you. For listening, for trusting my observation even when I wasn't sure myself. Always trust your instincts, Nurse Chen. They'll serve you well." Director Marsh emerged from the Aegis building, her expression showing the particular satisfaction of someone who'd just concluded a successful counterintelligence operation. She approached Evelyn with the formal posture that preceded official pronouncements. Colonel Kane, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you recognition of exceptional service under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Marcia's voice carried genuine respect now, all suspicion burned away by evidence and results. You identified multiple bioweapons threats, prevented 2 assassination attempts, neutralized a sophisticated hostile operative, and dismantled a criminal organization that had been operating undetected for years. That's the kind of performance that earns commendations and career advancement. I was just doing my job, Director. Your job was to consult on medical protocols. You exceeded that mandate by approximately 1,000%. Marsh paused, clearly wrestling with something. The intelligence community needs officers like you, people who can operate across multiple disciplines, who understand both tactical reality and strategic implications, who don't quit when the situation becomes impossible. I'm formally requesting your permanent return to active duty with assignment to a joint task force investigating bioweapons proliferation. It was generous. It was important work. It was exactly the kind of recognition that Evelyn had once craved before she'd learned that recognition came with costs measured in sleepless nights and moral compromises. Can I have time to consider the offer? Take whatever time you need, but, Colonel, understand that whether you accept active duty or not, you've already made your choice. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unlearn what you've learned. And you can't stop being the person who runs toward danger instead of away from it. Marcia's smile was understanding. Some burdens, once accepted, can never be fully set down. Evelyn knew she was right. 8 months of civilian nursing hadn't changed her fundamental nature. It had just been intermission before the next act. I'll give you my answer within 48 hours, Director. That's all I ask. Now go get some rest. You've earned it. As Marsh departed, Captain Miller approached with a tablet displaying news feeds that were just beginning to report on the overnight operation. Ma'am, you're about to become very famous. Multiple media outlets are covering the Aegis raid, and several have identified you as the key intelligence officer who cracked the case. Evelyn scrolled through headlines with growing dismay. Angel 6 stops bioweapons conspiracy. Combat medic turned nurse saves general, dismantles criminal enterprise. Decorated officer emerges from retirement to prevent catastrophe. So much for anonymity. So much for quiet civilian life. At least they're spelling your name correctly, Miller offered. Small mercies. Evelyn handed back the tablet, feeling the weight of public attention settling over her like a physical presence. Captain, I need to return to the hospital. I have some people I need to speak with before this gets completely out of control. The drive back to Cascade Medical Center took them through a Seattle morning that was waking up to news of the overnight operation. Evelyn watched the city scroll past the tactical van's windows, thinking about the strange trajectory of the last 24 hours, from dismissed nurse to celebrated hero, from invisible to unavoidable. The hospital was already buzzing with activity when she arrived, staff clustered around televisions and phones, watching the news coverage, speculating about details that were still classified. Evelyn slipped through the main entrance trying to maintain low profile, but the attempt was futile. Patricia Odom, the charge nurse who'd worked alongside her for 8 months, spotted her immediately. Evelyn, we've been watching the news. Is it true? Did you really stop a bioweapons attack and arrest the people responsible? It's complicated, Patricia. It's incredible. Patricia's professional reserve had cracked, showing genuine emotion underneath. All this time you were just working night shifts, taking the assignments nobody wanted, never complaining, never seeking attention, and the whole time you were this decorated combat veteran with skills we couldn't even imagine. Other nurses were gathering now, drawn by recognition and curiosity. Evelyn saw faces she'd worked with, eaten lunch with, shared the mundane intimacies of night shift life. They were looking at her differently now, seeing the call sign instead of the colleague. I'm still the same person I was yesterday, Evelyn said, knowing it was both true and completely false. Still a nurse, Oz, still someone who cares about patient outcomes and professional standards. The military background doesn't change that. But it explains so much. This from another nurse whose name Evelyn couldn't immediately recall. The way you handled crisis situations. The calm under pressure. the knowledge that seemed too advanced for standard nursing education. Sarah Chen pushed through the crowd, her expression protective. Everyone give her some space. She's been up all night conducting a federal operation. She doesn't need to stand here answering questions while she's about to collapse from exhaustion. The crowd reluctantly dispersed, though Evelyn caught whispers and glances following her as she walked toward the staff area. The anonymity she'd built over 8 months had evaporated completely, replaced by fame she neither wanted nor could escape. Dr. Patricia Huang, the hospital's CEO, intercepted her before she could reach the locker room. "Colonel Kane, I need a moment of your time." "Dr. Huang, I really need to—" "This won't take long. I wanted to personally inform you that, Doctor. Brennan's suspension has been made permanent pending formal termination proceedings. His conduct last night, combined with his treatment of you over the past 6 weeks, represents violations of hospital policy severe enough to warrant immediate dismissal. I appreciate you handling that, but I didn't request any specific action. You didn't need to. The video footage and witness statements speak for themselves. Dr. Brennan allowed his ego to compromise patient care and created a hostile work environment for a decorated combat veteran. That's unacceptable." Dr. Huang's expression softened slightly. "I also wanted to extend our offer again. Senior trauma consultant position, whatever hours you're comfortable with, full authority to override attending physicians when you identify critical threats. The position remains open regardless of your military obligations." "I haven't decided yet what my military obligations will be." "Then the offer stands until you do decide. You're always welcome here, Colonel. Always." Evelyn thanked her and finally made it to the staff locker room, where she could sit in blessed quiet and process everything that had happened. Her leg was screaming now, demanding rest and medical attention she'd been deferring for hours. She pulled up her pant leg and examined the swelling, not serious, but definitely requiring ice and elevation. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from General Thorpe. She almost let it go to voicemail, but duty overrode exhaustion. "Colonel Kane." "Evelyn. I've been briefed on the Aegis operation. Outstanding work. You've prevented multiple attacks, secured critical intelligence, and neutralized a major threat to national security." Thorpe's voice carried the warmth of professional pride. "I'm recommending you for the Defense Superior Service Medal and fast-tracking your promotion to full colonel. General, I appreciate the recognition, but I haven't decided yet if I'm accepting permanent return to active duty." "I know, and I'm not calling to pressure you. I'm calling to make sure you understand what your decision means." Thorpe paused, and when he continued, his voice carried unusual vulnerability. "Evelyn, you're one of the best officers I've ever commanded. Your combination of medical expertise and tactical capability is almost unique in the intelligence community. But I also know what this life costs. I know what you lost in Kandahar, and I know why you walked away." The mention of Kandahar sent sharp pain through memories Evelyn had tried to bury. The attack that had crushed her leg had also killed 3 medics under her command. 3 people she'd trained, mentored, considered friends. She'd survived, and they hadn't, and the guilt of that had driven her to civilian life as much as the physical injury. "General, I'm not asking you to relive the past. I'm asking you to consider the future. If you come back to active duty, you'll save lives, prevent attacks, stop threats that most people can't even imagine. But you'll also carry the weight of impossible decisions, the trauma of operations gone wrong, the isolation of classified existence. Only you can decide if that trade-off is worth it. What would you decide if you were in my position?" "I'd ask myself one question. Can I live with myself if I walk away knowing that my absence might cost lives I could have saved? If the answer is yes, walk away with clear conscience. If the answer is no, then you already know what you have to do." The call ended, leaving Evelyn alone with the question that had no easy answer. She thought about General Caldwell, alive because she'd recognized a threat others missed. About the Marines who'd survived Aegis's bioweapons because she'd neutralized the failsafe. About the future attacks that would be prevented because she'd secured the evidence that would dismantle the entire organization. How many lives balanced against one woman's desire for peace? She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Director Marsh. "I accept your offer. Permanent return to active duty with assignment to Bioweapons Task Force. When do I start?" The response came immediately. Effective today if you're willing. We have 18 other potential Aegis-related operations requiring immediate investigation. Your expertise is critical. Evelyn stared at the message, feeling the familiar weight of operational necessity settling over her shoulders. Then she typed, "Give me 72 hours to settle my affairs here. Then I'm yours." Understood. Thank you for your service, Colonel Kane. Your country needs you. She deleted the conversation and stood, her leg protesting but holding. In the locker, she found her civilian clothes, jeans, comfortable shirt, the simple outfit of someone who wanted to be invisible. She changed slowly, feeling each garment represent a choice, a commitment, a future she was selecting over alternatives. When she emerged from the locker room, Sarah Chen was waiting with patient determination. "You're going back, aren't you, to the military? How did you know?" The look on your face, like someone who's just made a decision they know is right, but wish could be different. Sarah's voice carried understanding beyond her years. "Will you ever come back to civilian nursing?" "I don't know. Maybe when I'm too old or too broken to serve any other way. But for now, the military needs what I can do more than this hospital does." "That's not true. This hospital needs you. I need you." Sarah's eyes glistened. "You showed me what real nursing looks like, what strength and competence and humility look like working together. I don't want to lose that example." Evelyn pulled her into a brief hug, feeling the younger woman's shoulders shake with suppressed emotion. "You don't need my example anymore, Sarah. You have your own strength now. Trust it. Use it. And remember that being dismissed or underestimated doesn't make you less capable. It just makes the people dismissing you less observant. Will you stay in touch? Let me know how you're doing." If operational security allows it, yes. But Sarah, understand that where I'm going, communication might be limited or restricted entirely. Don't take silence as abandonment. Take it as me doing the work that keeps people safe. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. Then do the work. Save the lives. Be the hero that people need. Just come back alive, okay? I'll do my best. Evelyn walked out of Cascade Medical Center for what she knew would be the last time as a staff nurse. The rain had finally stopped, leaving Seattle washed clean and sparkling in morning sunlight. She thought about the life she was leaving, the quiet shifts, the routine cases, the comfortable anonymity of being just another nurse in a busy hospital. And she thought about the life she was choosing, the classified operations, the impossible decisions, the weight of knowing that her skills could prevent disasters most people would never know almost happened. Captain Miller was waiting by his vehicle, having apparently anticipated her decision. "Ma'am, I've been ordered to provide transport to Fort Lewis for your formal reinstatement processing." "Of course you have." Evelyn climbed into the passenger seat, settling in for the drive. "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Anything, ma'am." "Do you ever regret joining the military? Ever wish you'd chosen a normal civilian life instead of combat deployments and tactical operations?" Miller was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the road. "Every day, ma'am, and every day I remember why I chose this path, because someone has to stand between ordinary people and the threats they shouldn't have to face. Because I have skills that can save lives if I'm willing to use them. Because doing nothing when you can do something isn't really a choice at all." He glanced at her. "I suspect you understand that better than most." "I'm starting to." The drive to Fort Lewis took them through suburban sprawl giving way to military installation, civilian world transitioning to operational reality. At the gate, MPS checked identification and waved them through with crisp salutes that acknowledged Evelyn's rank and reputation. The reinstatement processing was efficient and impersonal. Medical evaluation, security briefings, updated clearances, assignment to the Joint Bioweapons Task Force that Director Marsh had assembled. By late afternoon, Evelyn was standing in a conference room being briefed on 18 ongoing investigations into potential Aegis-related operations. The scale was staggering. Aegis Solutions had been operating for 7 years, conducting weapons development and selling to hostile actors across the globe. Their client list included terrorist organizations, criminal syndicates, and foreign intelligence services. Dismantling the network would take months, possibly years, and Evelyn would be at the center of it, applying her unique combination of medical knowledge and tactical expertise to identify and neutralize bioweapons threats before they could be deployed. "Colonel Kane, Director Marsh stood at the head of the conference table, flanked by representatives from FBI, CIA, DIA, and military intelligence. Welcome to the Joint Task Force. Your first assignment is coordinating with CDC on potential Thanatos variant deployment in Eastern Europe. We have intelligence suggesting Aegis sold samples to a Polish criminal organization with connections to Russian intelligence. When do I leave? 72 hours. I believe you requested time to settle your affairs? I did, but affairs can be settled faster if necessary. Take the time. You've earned it. And Colonel Marsh's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Thank you for coming back, for being willing to carry this burden. Not everyone would. Evelyn nodded, accepting the gratitude without false modesty. Someone has to. Might as well be someone who knows what they're doing. The briefing continued for another 2 hours, covering operational protocols, communication procedures, and tactical resources available to the task force. By the time Evelyn left Fort Lewis, the sun was setting and exhaustion was dragging at her like physical weight. She returned to her small apartment, the civilian space she'd rented 8 months ago when she'd tried to build a life outside the military. It felt foreign now, belonging to someone who no longer existed. The quiet nurse who'd taken night shifts and avoided attention had been replaced by Lieutenant Colonel Kane, bioweapons specialist, operational consultant, public figure. There would be no going back to anonymity, no return to comfortable invisibility. But as Evelyn stood in her apartment looking at the life she was leaving behind, she felt no regret, only the clear certainty of purpose that came from accepting who you were instead of who you wished you could be. Her phone buzzed with a final message from General Thorpe. Caldwell is fully recovered and asking to speak with you. I'm forwarding his contact information. He wants to thank you personally. Evelyn called the number, and General Caldwell answered on the second ring. Colonel Kane, I'm told I owe you my life, twice. Just doing my job, General. Your job was to be a civilian nurse working night shifts in Seattle. Saving my life from sophisticated bioweapons attacks was considerably above your pay grade. Caldwell's voice carried the particular warmth of someone who understood the cost of service. I've read the operation reports. You identified threats others missed, developed countermeasures that didn't exist, and dismantled a criminal organization while under suspicion of being compromised yourself. That's exceptional work under impossible circumstances. Thank you, sir. I'm going to be honest with you, Colonel. The intelligence community has enemies we haven't identified yet. Threats we don't understand, weapons we can't counter with conventional approaches. We need officers who can think unconventionally, who combine multiple skill sets, who don't quit when situations become impossible. Caldwell paused. We need more officers like you, and I'm going to make sure you have the resources and authority to train them. Sir, I'm already assigned to the Bioweapons Task Force. I know, and that's critical work, but I'm also creating a new training program for medical officers who want to specialize in combat medicine and intelligence operations. I want you to help design the curriculum, select the candidates, and establish the standards. Can you do that? It was more responsibility, more weight, more burden to carry, but it was also opportunity to shape the next generation of combat medics, to pass on knowledge earned through pain and experience, to ensure that future officers were better prepared than she'd been. I can do that, General. Outstanding. We'll discuss details when you return from Eastern Europe. Until then, know that you have the full support of Defense Intelligence Agency and my personal gratitude. The country doesn't know what you prevented tonight, but I do. And I won't forget. The call ended, leaving Evelyn alone in her quiet apartment with the certainty that her life had irrevocably changed. She'd walked into Cascade Medical Center 8 months ago, hoping to disappear into civilian normalcy. She was leaving as a decorated combat officer with expanded responsibilities and public recognition. The limping nurse they'd dismissed as deadweight had become the backbone of a critical national security operation. Justice delivered, truth revealed, purpose restored. Evelyn Kane stood at her window watching Seattle's lights begin to glow against the gathering darkness. And for the first time in 8 months, she felt complete. Not because she'd achieved revenge against those who doubted her. Revenge was just noise, ultimately meaningless. But because she'd proven to herself that injury didn't mean incapability, that dismissal didn't equal worthlessness, that being underestimated was only weakness if you accepted the estimation. She'd spent years learning to walk with a limp, to carry pain as constant companion, to compensate for physical limitation through strength elsewhere. And she'd discovered that the limp itself was power, visible evidence of survival, testament to refusal to quit, reminder that wholeness wasn't required for capability. Dr. Brennan had mocked her injury and lost everything. Director Marsh had suspected her loyalty and gained a critical asset. The hospital staff had underestimated her expertise and witnessed someone ordinary become extraordinary through nothing more than refusing to accept imposed limitations. And Evelyn herself had learned that running from your nature only delayed confrontation with who you actually were. She was Angel 6, combat medic, intelligence officer, bioweapons specialist, and yes, nurse, because nursing was about healing, and healing would always be her core purpose, regardless of context or mission. The military had reclaimed her, but on terms she'd chosen, doing work she'd selected, carrying burdens she'd accepted with open eyes and clear mind. Outside her window, Seattle continued its eternal rhythm. Rain and traffic, lights and darkness, ordinary people living ordinary lives protected by extraordinary people doing extraordinary things in shadows most would never see. Evelyn Kane was one of those shadows now. Not invisible anymore, but necessary. Not dismissed, but essential. Not dead weight, but the precise counterweight that kept complicated systems balanced. Her phone displayed new orders, new missions, new threats requiring her unique combination of skills and experience. She read them with professional focus, already planning approaches, considering resources, calculating probabilities of success. Then she set the phone aside, pulled out her cane, smooth wood worn to shine by months of use, and stood with it planted firmly against the floor. The cane that Dr. Brennan had mocked as symbol of weakness, the cane that marked her as different, slower, less than whole, the cane that had become her signature, her strength, her proof that capability transcended physical perfection. She would carry it into every future operation, every classified briefing, every training session with the next generation of combat medics. Not as apology for limitation, but as declaration of adapted strength. They told the limping nurse to stay back, she said quietly to her reflection in the darkening window, until someone needed saving. Then suddenly the limp didn't matter anymore. Only the saving mattered. Only the refusing to quit mattered. Only the strength that couldn't be measured by how fast you ran or how straight you walked. Tomorrow, she would begin preparations for Eastern Europe. Next week, she would start designing training curricula for future combat medics. Next month, she would testify at trials that would dismantle what remained of Aegis Solutions' criminal enterprise. But tonight, she was simply a woman who discovered that being dismissed was only permanent if you allowed it to be, that public opinion was just noise unless you made it your reality, that strength came in forms far more diverse than physical perfection. The limping nurse had become the officer everyone needed, not despite the limp, but because of everything the limp represented: survival, adaptation, refusal to accept limitation as destiny. And as Seattle's darkness deepened and stars began emerging through clearing clouds, Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn Kane stood at attention in her quiet apartment, saluting the reflection of someone who'd finally stopped running from who they were and started running toward who they'd always been meant to become. Mission complete, justice served, purpose found. The war would continue. The threats would evolve. The burden would never fully lift. But she would carry it. Because someone had to. Because she could. Because walking away when you had the capability to save lives wasn't peace. It was just permission for others to die in your absence. And Evelyn Kane had spent 8 months learning that permission could never be granted again. She turned from the window, picked up her phone, and began planning for Poland. The limping nurse was done staying back. Angel 6 was operational again. And the world was about to discover that underestimating the injured was the most dangerous mistake anyone could make.